City Council. Oh, we've got to do, sorry. That's a signal that the audiovisual is working. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Wilsonville City Council work session at 5:41 p.m. on October 7th. And I'll start by asking the councilors if there are any comments after you've reviewed the agenda on items on consent. Okay, any councilor concerns?
No.
Okay. We'll start our pre-council work session, and the subject is the Beckman Creek Sanitary Sewer Interceptor and Trail Project Update.
Evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for your, you bet. Evening, Mayor and council members. I want to thank you for your time. My name is Andrew Barrett. I'm the Capital Project Engineering Manager. And this is...
I'm Katie Wilson. I am part of the project team working on public involvement.
We wanted to provide an update to council specific to the Beckman Creek Interceptor and Trail Project. Before I get started, I just want to touch on some of the background of the project. Essentially, the project is looking to provide increased sewer capacity through the Beckman corridor. I'm sorry, the Beckman Creek corridor. The capacity essentially is there to upgrade the existing sewer system and provide additional capacity for Frog Pond South and East. The work is generally from the Beckman Road area down to Memorial Park. With the new sewer line installation that will occur, a maintenance access road will also be installed that will double as a regional trail that will provide connectivity for pedestrians and bikes. Essentially, it's going to be an ADA compliant trail. Both these projects are part of the master plan, the sewer master plan and the trails master plan that we have. By combining the two projects, we're essentially going to have some pretty significant cost savings for the project. So a quick project status update. The project started in 2023. The data collection phase essentially is done. Surveying generally revealed that we have steep slopes. The creek, and near the creek, it's very narrow. There is an existing path down there, but it's not sufficient for what's needed to provide the sewer maintenance or trail. The wetland delineation was done, and there are very significant and many wetlands throughout the project. Tree inventory work revealed a number of significant trees and some very high-quality tree groves. Our geotechnical analysis revealed some complexities to the projects that actually will end up driving a lot of the path and sewer location, but we've got solutions for all these new challenges that we found. And there were no significant findings on the cultural resource investigations. We did have a number of open houses and other events where we look to seek input from the public. Those were generally all positive about the sewer project and the trail project. There were some concerns to neighbors immediately adjacent to the project, which some of those folks came and talked to council. Right now, we are, moving the preliminary design forward using the input that we've got from the community, which generally included, as I kind of mentioned, ADA compliance to make it walkable, trying to reduce some of the project impacts to the natural area by reducing the trail width. We also looked at the construction methods to see if we could avoid causing significant damage to parts of the creek corridor. We also looked at just generally what most of the feedback was. One key takeaway we got was almost all the people were very excited for this project and they wanted us to go faster. So with that being said, the project's very large. We divided it up into 3 general areas. Each area, and I'll bring up a map here in a second, each area kind of has some unique features to it that provided some challenges that we've already worked on addressing. We're going to continue to seek public feedback and work to solve those issues as we move forward. But some of the key things we had to do to ensure that we were meeting the goals of the project was to keep the trail generally within 10 feet of the existing trail and the existing sewer line. Again, this is a regional trail, so we have widths that we need to meet, but there's a little bit of wiggle room where we could vary that. We found through the geotechnical work, we had to stay back from the very edge of the slope, which then pushed us to require some retaining walls in certain areas. But then we also needed to take a look at ensuring that we did allow for wildlife to pass, through the area, and also for fencing that we would be required to install in certain areas, that we keep it as open as we can to keep wildlife moving through the stream corridor. So basically, there's a matrix of kind of competing things that we work to balance out. The first kind of area, when we talk about those 3 major areas, essentially is north of Wilsonville Road. A lot of the construction through that area is kind of the same, where we're going to do a significant amount of pipe bursting, and that's where we take a big pipe and we actually drag it into the existing pipe. It just breaks the pipe up, it bursts it as it goes. We don't have to just dig a whole bunch, and it does really work to minimize the construction. There still would be digging, but not as much as if we just trenched the pipe in altogether. There is one small section off of Iron Horse where we are going to have to do some realignment of the existing sewer line. And so if you see where it says Beckman Road, it's to the south or under Beckman Road about 2 or 3 blocks. So we did here through this section, we modified the trail widths where things were, rather steep. We still met the maintenance need, the trail standards, and we worked at minimizing the impacts. Even with that, we did have walls, like I mentioned, which range anywhere from 2 to 10 feet. But we worked really hard to try to keep most of them under 6 feet, because as we refine and push those wall heights down, the costs really start to drop. So it's definitely a benefit to try to work on keeping those walls short. The neighbors kind of in this section actually preferred to have walls just from a security or safety standpoint. They thought that their homes might be a little more protected. So they saw that as a benefit. So the next major section, and I guess you can see the rendering on there where we've got the trail and sort of what the wall and the trail looks like with our Vector truck way off in the distance. So the next section is Wilsonville Road to Coble Lane, and you can see that on the green kind of square there. This is actually the most challenging segment for construction. There's a little bit of pipe bursting in this section, and then we have to switch to open cut. We do have a turnaround that is installed in this area because we found that the slopes and the existing tree groves that are down near Wilsonville Road essentially do not allow the vac truck, the maintenance truck, to go straight through or even into that area. So you can see the yellow line. That is actually where the sewer line, and the sewer line continues on the green alignment, and the yellow is the path. So we generally, at this location, had to separate the path and the sewer line to go 2 different directions. It's very difficult at Wilsonville Road to come up to the road grade on the south side. So this location, we had to look at installing a bridge and a boardwalk. And I've got another slide, and I'll touch on that a little bit more, but there's not a lot of wonderful options in this area, and this option we found had the most positives to it, so this is what we're going to move forward with, so.
See, before you leave that, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So how does the vac truck function happen when you can't get it close to that pipe?
So the vac truck is generally very good at, pulling material. If there's gravel, a lot of gravel, believe it or not, gets worked into the sewer system. It's good at pulling up grease and gravel and stuff that would get sucked in there. So our jetter truck does have a hose length on it that will go a certain distance. So if we can get down to that little segment that's kind of in that box, within so many feet, the jetter hose can actually go out and spray and clean everything on the inside of the sewer line out. The vac truck would wait at the bottom end and suck up that material as it's coming out. However, there are limits as to how far that stuff, how far you can jet. And it takes a significant amount of water, which is one of the constraints that we had to deal with to make sure that we're not trying to push it out so far that we can't actually clean that material out. So does that help?
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
It sounds challenging.
Yep.
But
I have a question too. Was the walkway with the bridge, was that as you were originally scoping this out, was there an intention that would happen, or did
That was not the intention, but until we had all the constraints identified, we weren't exactly sure what it was going to look like to get through this area.
How significant of an impact will that have on the budget?
There is a significant impact. I've got slides on there. It's
Okay.
around $4.5 million. We do have a grant.
For just the bridge?
Just the bridge. We do have a grant application in, or a pre-grant application in that's been accepted, and I'll touch on that in a few minutes, so. Yes.
Thank you for the mayor's question about, okay, how does this work when the two paths diverge, kind of, right? And that helps explain, so we have the hose kind of blasting the stuff to the point where they then join back up. Do I understand that correctly? Okay, but we have to be careful about how far of a segment this is, because it doesn't work too well if we try to stretch it too far. Does this also then change the frequency that maintenance needs to happen?
No,
because we don't want too much gunk that we're
Yeah.
trying to blast down?
No, effectively, this should not change
Okay.
the frequency at all, so.
Okay. So otherwise, the work will look pretty similar to what we've projected, I guess?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So,
And we just try to limit this separation to these smaller segments?
correct, yep.
Okay.
So-
good innovation there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have one more question, though,
Sure.
and I might be jumping ahead of the tips of my
Totally
skis
fine.
here, but you mentioned the Bridge Creek Apartments tree protection in there. This appears to not be a very residential area, so is there minimal impact to residents at this point? Because I'm thinking about, I saw in the report on page 6 and page 205 of the staff report that there was some additional identification of, not only the regrading and the retaining walls, but impact on trees and visibility. Is that, how significant is that?
So we stopped with any type of construction, there are going to be impacts. We are working through trying to make some refinements, minor refinements to the trail to avoid impacting trees where possible. That's one thing that we heard from the public, but also we're trying to make sure that we do the best we can to avoid impacting significant trees or trees that can be saved through some minor design modifications. So specific to the Bridge Creek Apartments, there's a very significant cedar grove that is on that side. There are also cedars on the other side. And I'll show you sort of what we were up against. I think it's on the next slide or the slide after, with some tree dots and the existing layout that shows it. I mean, we'd end up sort of removing all of the trees through that area. Oh, go
Is
ahead.
there any way that you could have identified some of this before you got to 30%? Because it seems like there's several new events that have occurred at this level, or is that pretty standard with design phase?
It's pretty standard. It's pretty standard for the most part. I mean, generally, you need to do a lot of data collection. There are some, general assumptions that you can make that show what the, project impacts are going to look like. But until you get in and do the finite data collection, slope analysis, those kind of things, it can get very difficult to make assumptions that follow all the way through the project that are as good as what the data will back up, so. Yeah, yep. Other questions? I know this is a lot, and I got a couple more slides to kind of explain what's going on, so. So here, this is the bridge and boardwalk discussion, and here's, to answer one of the questions, it does add around $4.5 million to the project. The hard part is, I just want to touch on this, the sewer project, the sewer is not going over there. The work that we were doing is not going to end up going that direction, so this will have to come from a different funding source, and that's where Zach Weigel, the city engineer, identified some grant opportunities for us to be able to acquire that. That's been applied for by the Community Development Department, and we have acceptance of the pre-application. We're encouraged to apply, and I believe that there's a council action coming up in the next month or two where there's going to be a formal ask for that. But I want to, I guess, get back to the project here where the sewer line is that yellow line. I know it's kind of hard potentially to see on some of the screens, but that is going to have some minor construction happening down through that area to upsize the sewer. It is going to continue underneath the Wilsonville Bridge through some of that wetland. There will be temporary wetland impacts that do get put, they will get restored, but there are going to be some more permanent impacts to the trail location, as you can see, that kind of goes off away from where the sewer alignment is at. So that will end up connecting into there's a rapid flashing beacon. It's a pretty heavily used crosswalk at that location. Again, we heard some great feedback from the public where they said, there is a rapid flashing beacon. Sometimes it gets ignored. Can you do something? So we're looking at ways to improve that to really help provide solutions to items that the public has identified. So I'm going to move to the next slide, unless you guys have questions on this. And I have time for questions at the end. So the last major area is south of Colby Lane. This area cuts generally through Memorial Park. This is all going to be open cut. And there, with open cut, what we have talked about is replacing the sewer line in place. They'll dig through with a big piece of yellow equipment, dig it out. The hard part with this is there will be bypass pumping, so the public or people are generally going to see piping going above ground with some pumps, and so we'll have to make sure that we coordinate to ensure that access to the park remains open and available for the public to use. So. Again, getting back to the public outreach, we have pulled all of the tools you see in the green box out to make sure that we are working to engage the community every step of the way, everywhere that we can, to ensure that we're hearing feedback from them and working to incorporate it into our design. We took a couple of samples of some of the items that we've done to try to seek feedback from the community as a whole. I will say that we are working on continuing to engage the public. We have at least one more meeting with the public as the design progresses further to make sure that we have gathered all of the feedback that we can, and we want to make sure that we show the public how we've heard what their suggestions are. To this date, we've got, I think, 6 different ways that we've reached out. We had, for the Beckman Road Corridor project, we had information with regards to this project to put it on people's radar. That was back in January of '23. We had the neighborhood meeting in May of '23. There was 35 people who showed up to that. July of '23, we had 56 respondents to our Let's Talk Wilsonville page. We had an event at Party in the Park. We had one of our open houses in May of '23 had 40 people show up. And we had an event September, it was about a month ago now, another open house with 46 respondents. We did get some feedback that people didn't feel like they could comment at one of those meetings, so we sat down and had a one-on-one with those folks to make sure like they felt like we were talking to them about what the project impacts were going to be and what to expect. So, sorry, I think there are a lot of common ideas. We started looking at all of the feedback we've got, responses from the public. These are the general common threads. There were other things that came out of the feedback, but these are the ones that kept sort of recurring and occurring. And a lot of these have been addressed just through standard design, like bike-friendly, family-friendly. We've looked at ensuring that we're meeting, the bicycle pedestrian standards, the trail standards that we're using to ensure that those things are baked in, especially from the get-go for this project. I'm going to point out, we did get some conflicting feedback about things like lights or no lights. The public was kind of split, but our policies at this point, our city policy is that we don't install lights in natural areas. So, but we've worked to explain that to the public. The last, I guess, the really important items, the public generally wanted to know where the access point were to the trail. We've got the existing access point that cuts through the middle of the area, and a lot of folks were concerned about, was there going to be a trail punched in right by my house? Essentially, the answer is no. People wanted to know more about communications, how they could get involved in the project. Again, impacts to the adjacent neighborhoods, wildlife, nature. The city's going to take on maintenance, and then there were safety concerns that were brought up. And specific to that, some of the most concerned citizens, we actually sat down with the police chief to try to work on addressing all of those items. So, schedule, we are right in the middle. We are at the design phase. We're really starting to kick that off. We expect construction to go into 2027. We're continuing to move this project along. And I'm just going to end with another image, rendering of the trail with the maintenance access with folks on it showing what some of the walls will look like. So, and with that, I would love to open up to questions, comments, concerns.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Well, I have a question, comment, I guess. As you mentioned, we've been hearing from citizens on this project for well over a year and a half or so. And I think in addition to the formal meetings that we've had, my understanding is there's been a lot of communication with individual citizens about concerns that they had. In looking through the information and the responses, at least at the last open house, pretty positive kinds of input. Do you think that the issues that the citizens had have been resolved? Or are there still some outstanding that we just, we are just not able to address?
I think a lot of the issues have been resolved. I don't think that all of them are probably ever going to be fully addressed. And it's not through the project or the project team essentially working to try to address those. But we're doing what we can, and we are still working to try to resolve what we can. There's been requests for more information that we don't have yet because the design isn't fully vetted. So, is there anything you want to add to that?
You know, we also have just been really trying to focus on making sure that we use communication strategies that allow for lots of different voices to participate at different points, making sure that we're balancing information out with opportunities to gather information from the community, understanding that direct neighbors may have different areas of interest as opposed to trail users or sanitary sewer customers. So wanting to make sure that there's opportunities and equal interest given to all those different communities, just to make sure that the project really does reflect the community's needs and values, and understanding that there's a lot of diversity in the feedback that we've gotten and everyone's lived experience and how they're going to navigate the construction of this project and then enjoy it once it's complete.
I think one of the, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunities that have been offered for the citizen input, and that this is not the first time this project has been brought to the council and that we've talked through. I think we're now in the middle. We've been kind of talking about that and the concerns that citizens have had all the way along. I think one of the things that I appreciate is that this is an example of how our city provides opportunities for citizen input. There's a perception that it's only 3 minutes at a council meeting, when in fact on most all of the projects that the city is working on, there's multiple points of opportunity for citizen input, and that the council relies on the staff to bring that information to us, especially in those situations where we would be required to make a decision one way or the other. So as we move through the rest with the design phase and with the other two phases, I think the council would appreciate continuing to have that input and know exactly where our citizen concerns are, and
Sure.
because it's an excellent, it's excellent example of how most of the projects are done.
Yeah.
And how the council uses and gets that feedback from citizens. So thank you.
Go ahead.
I appreciated reading through in our packet some of those excerpts from the comment cards from the open houses. And, you had the summary of some of the topics that were brought up in these comment cards. And I'm seeing, I get it. Like people are like, is there going to be park benches? Are there going to be garbage cans? Is there lighting? Is there not lighting? There's so many questions about what this will ultimately be. And I understand that makes people feel anxious when that hasn't been defined yet. But also at 30% design, I get why it hasn't been defined yet. And part of this process is to get the feedback so that we know how we want to ultimately have things appear and have things created. We're still in that creation process. But at what point will we have that a little bit more shored up so that people do know, are there park benches? Where might those park benches be? Or are, just some of is there going to be, the water stations? Is there a water station, for pets? Is there the dog bags? Is it like what, it's just so people can start to envision it. When might we know that? I know on the timeline, the stage that we're at, that's a big design, that's many, many months. So what, can you put a little bit more framework on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that during the last open house meeting, it was time to generally ask the public, hey, we have opportunities for some of these amenities to go in. What would you like to see? And so we did get some feedback specific to that. We also asked the public generally where they want them to go. So we're around 30%. Probably the best time to have that is close to 60%. The exact timing of that, I would have to go back and look at the project schedule, but it would be probably 4 to 6 months away. And we would do outreach to make sure that folks are aware that this is a wonderful time to see generally how this project is shaping up, so.
I think that's helpful information, thank you, just to kind of get some of these goalposts along the way, because, October 24 to December 25 is a long time, and I know there's many things that are occurring within that, but the more we can kind of have some of those goals as part of it, I think that's helpful. One other question that I had too is about the segment that goes through the park. And you mentioned that there, if we have to, what was the term, trench or, right?
Yeah, we would trench.
Trench.
And
I mean,
bypass.
that'll make some disruption. So for what part, I'm trying to look at the map and picture like what,
Yeah.
what elements of the park are going to be touched? Are we talking about fields? How does that work with sports schedules? Like what, all of those sorts of things people are going to want to know way in advance and as much as we can, right? So.
Yeah. So the good news is it's not going to impact the sports fields. There's a pump station that looks like right next to one of the barns near the sports field. That's where the project essentially ends. And I can supply some more images or data on this, but essentially there is a gravel trail that is not heavily used. That's where most of the work is going to occur. The one area that might have some impacts to it, and we're still working on a plan for this, would be the parking lot for the dog park that kind of goes by the bathroom, but we won't be doing construction in the dog park area. So it's just the vehicle access in and out might be impacted, and we haven't, we have some ideas, but we haven't worked out exactly what that looks like yet, so.
So is it too early to say if the dog park would continue to be operational?
It is too early to say that. I
Okay.
do not envision at this point there will be issues though. So we're
Okay.
going to work to try to keep everything as open as we can.
And safe.
Oh, of course,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any, Councilor Dunwell?
Yes.
Okay.
As a first-term counselor, I've been able to watch this over the last, 2 years. And it's been quite eye-opening because we did have citizens that stepped up, that had concerns. There was a not in my backyard. There's been fear of homeless encampments and things like that. And, it's a really eye-opening experience to see this firsthand, because you can be a citizen activist and you can show up at a council meeting or a work session and go, what are you doing spending all that money for? But the reality, or, oh, you're going to bring in all these homeless people or whatever it may be. But I think about the future of this city, and I think a lot about what this looks like 20 years from now, and the beauty of bringing in that Frog Pond community in a park-like structure, because that's what it feels like. I think a lot about Graham Oaks. Granted, that's a metro project, so funding came from a different place, but same thing, sort of, right? We don't have a homeless problem. It's accessible so that public safety folks can get in there and do what they need to do if there is ever an issue. It improves the community. And I see all of those being met by this. And I'm fiscally conservative, and there is going to be spend and budgeting tied to the outlay of this. But when I think about the vision of the city for after I'm gone, this will be one of those moments that I point to and go, yep, we did that. It's really cool. So, it's going to be really exciting to watch it come forth. I'm sure that there will continue to be folks that will be impacted and have challenges from a lot of different places, but I say stay the course.
Yep.
Because this is really, really good for the future of our city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I was just going to wrap up that if you're doing such a great job, which the neighbors and everybody wanted, and we did too, on the website. So you don't have to remember everything that was said at this meeting. You can go to the city website and in the search bar, type in Beckman Creek Interceptor and Trail Project. It looks really good to me, really well organized. You can sign up for the newsletter there. There might be some things that are missing. People want to see more of something. if that's the case, and they're just needing more information or in a different way, how do they get that information to you?
If there are requests, I believe my direct information is on the website.
Great.
They can reach out to me, and we will make sure that we can get them answers. And most of the community members who live along the project have my information, and we've been in contact with them throughout the project.
Right, if they live right on there. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have 2 more items for our work session. Thank you both for your time. To get between, we've got 45 minutes, and I think we do have time for both of them. First one is Climate Action Plan.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Kerry Rappel, the city's Natural Resources Manager. Let's see here. I'm going to have to put my glasses on. I didn't need to do this like 5 years ago, but I need to do it now. Let's see here. There we go. All right. So, I'm here before you tonight to talk about the Climate Action Plan. We're just getting started on this. As you may recall, that this has been a goal of the council for quite some time. Actually, at one point, we were looking to have this plan in alignment with the Clackamas County's plan. They have not been able to finalize or adopt that plan. It's remained in a draft form. I'll speak a little bit later, but we are able to use information that was gathered as part of that planning process. We're actually updating some of that. And so it does serve as a useful guide in terms of what we want to do with this plan. But we will definitely meet the objectives of the goals that you have for 23-25, and we will be finishing this plan by about June of next year. So we'll be well within that time frame that the council had envisioned. So basically, we're going to be working from some goals and objectives that, are part of any climate adaptation or climate action process. We're always looking at these opportunities eventually for mitigation and for adaptation. And so in regards to mitigation, we look at those causes and why is the climate changing and what are these greenhouse gas sources and, what is causing the increase in temperature and all the other changes that we see that might be associated with climate change. And then there's this idea of adaptation where we can deal with the effects of it and look at things that might prepare us better in terms of natural disasters or, in the case of planting trees, carbon sequestration. So it's a combination of things that eventually, we'll be looking towards as far as like the actions that come out of this plan and things that I'll speak to specifically, but it will, move forward in terms of looking at these broader goals of mitigation and adaptation. And so the paradigm for this process is really, looking at, what things can we avoid at this point in terms of what generates these emissions. And then going forward as far as looking at, well, what can we reduce and what changes could we make to achieve that? And where there are replacements that we can make, especially in terms of renewable energy. There's been a lot of progress in the community, especially with green energy, especially the city. We're at 100% at this point. And so, but there's things that could be done in the community yet in regards to that. And then, there's this idea of removing things that, or replacing them basically with some natural systems or technology. And then there's ways that we could look at that might not just be local, but, offsets that we could do in terms of something that might have a broader regional impact. And so the plan will be divided into basically 3 steps. There's this idea of analysis, and then there will be the modeling, which I'll speak about next, and then the public engagement we'll do as part of this. And so at this point, we're just starting this. We're looking at basically the context review, which involves looking at some of our existing documents, such as the comp plan, the TSP, the urban forest management plan, and then SMART has a climate action plan that they've put together. But we're also looking at what they've done with safe routes and commuter options. And so those are going to form sort of the core of what we look at in regards to our local efforts. We'll certainly take into account other things that we're doing from a programmatic perspective or from a planning perspective, but we really wanted to hone in on those specific documents. And then there'll be, other things that'll come into play, such as things that are being done at the state and federal level. We have, as you know, climate-friendly and equitable communities, and what that means in terms of some of the projects that we might be moving forward with in the city. And then this transitions from looking at this background information, this context to the plan, and then we look at ultimately actions that can move us forward in terms of reducing our emissions. Ultimately, we'll have a draft plan that'll be prepared and then a final plan. And so there'll be a number of touch points with the council in terms of how we bring this back to you. One will be certainly when we get to that point of the actions that we're looking to do. We'd certainly want the feedback as far as that. And then ultimately, there's these scenarios that get put together in terms of what the modeling shows. And there'll be a low carbon scenario that we'll have a discussion with the council about. And that'll really inform then what happens with the draft and final plans. So I'm working with the consultant right now. There's a lot of data that we have to put together in terms of not only energy consumption, but population, land use, transportation, and we're looking at this from both the city and community level. So specifically at the city level, in terms of what the city has responsibility for, that includes our facilities. A big component of it actually is our water and wastewater systems. As you know, we have plants for both those systems. We have an extensive a system that conveys, that material. And so ultimately then we'll be going into defining these scenarios, and they're terms that are referred to as business as usual and business as planned. And business as usual really looks at over the next 25 years up to 2050, what our existing programs, policies, everything that we're doing in terms of the city. And then business as planned really adds another component to it in terms of anything at the county, state, and federal level. And so that kind of forms the baseline really. And then what will happen as we move forward, the low carbon scenario will be based on what we looked at initially, but then we'll be adding those actions in. And once the actions are added, then we look at the energy consumption and emissions associated with that. And so that's what, I'm sorry, I think I jumped ahead of myself. Yep, went through that. And then ultimately, we're going to just, have this public engagement process that we finalized a schedule for that. One of the things that we put together was a staff advisory committee. So that's made up of all the departments in the city. And they're providing the same kind of involvement and input that we'll have with the city council and the planning commission. And so they'll be our first opportunity to really bring that forward and have them give us their input. And then we'll move it on to the planning commission, city council, as far as those actions. And then ultimately that low carbon scenario that'll form the basis for the plan. We're going to be able to actually update a survey that was done as part of the county's plan that we shared 3 years ago. And so it'll be kind of an interesting thing to see if people's viewpoints have changed over those 3 years. Are they consistent with what we saw then? So that survey will be going up this week on the Let's Talk site that we've established for the Climate Action Plan. And then probably around January, we're looking to have a public open house where we'll invite people to have a discussion about those, especially those actions that we're looking towards, in, as far as how that'll shape what we do in the city. And then ultimately, we'll have a report that comes out in terms of what the consultant provides. One of the benefits that we have is that the consultant SSG, they worked on the county's plan. So they have very easy access to the information that, was done with the modeling as well as with the public engagement. So it's very seamless that way in terms of the process. So this is the schedule that we'll be following over the next, 7 to 8 months. And so right now we're at that beginning phase where we're doing some of that initial gathering of data and getting the model ready. And then we'll be transitioning come the fall into looking at those low carbon actions. And that's where we'll have those opportunities to meet with staff, with the planning commission, with the city council, and then mix in that public event as part of that. And then ultimately move towards spring, late spring probably, for the, the adoption of the draft, or the review of the draft plan and the adoption of the final plan. So that's what I had.
Any questions?
I'd actually like to say something. When I read through this, it's hard to even think about what the future looks like. Oh, God, with every bone in my body, I wish climate change wasn't real. I really do. And yet, as an elected official, I believe that it's my responsibility to my grandchildren and their children to do something. And if I didn't do anything, at least on a low, do what you can, all of us to do what I can. And these are big decisions that we're making here. And, I kept thinking when I was reading it about tying it back to the Beckman, the path.
Right.
And if you were thinking about a future where, transportation, we may have to look at how do we get to work a little bit differently, because everything's everything's changing around us, that those types of connectors as an available option are really important, not maybe to me, but to my children and my grandchildren down the road, because it's getting hot out there. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to a friend in Phoenix. They had over 100 days of over 100 degrees.
I know, I've heard that.
And it continues to, and I have another friend in Florida who's just evacuating today for the second time. This is real, and it's upon us. And I think in Oregon, we had a tendency to somewhat call ourselves a climate oasis, and we were kind of jolted back into reality with that, with our 119, 120-day, it was 2 years ago, and the ice storms and things like that. So again, like I said, I wish with every bone in my body that climate change wasn't real. But I think all of us as elected officials and all of the staff in the city have done everything we can to continue to think about that future. So thank you.
Thank you. I think about it every day. So,
Carrie, thank you for your report and planning. One of the things that occurred to me as maybe an additional option, we have, and I think this is something that you were asking for. First of all, I had a question on the items that were listed in our report that are the steps in developing the plan. And my question, I guess, is, are those sequential steps? So it's 1 through 8 and it's planned to go down the line on those? Is that kind of how it is?
yes.
It was a little different to see when you were talking about it, and you were talking about it in 3 phases. It might have been easier to see that steps under each of those instead of 8 sequential things, but I get where you're going with this.
Okay.
But one of the things I wondered is we historically have difficulty with getting enough citizen input in community surveys, and even with open houses. I mean, we historically get, we announce them, and we get 50 to 70 or sometimes fewer than that, even people participating. So I think that's a challenge, and I encourage us to try and figure out how do we get, really good citizen input. Because I think that'll be important in evaluate for the council to evaluate the strategies. But I wondered about the possibility, and I heard you say that you were talking about kind of an internal advisory committee that would be made up of the departments.
Yeah, the staff advisory committee, we've set that up already. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it might be useful to have some of our, especially our larger industries in the community, and have some of those folks weigh in on strategies either that they are currently doing. I think it'll give another perspective, and maybe some other opportunities for how we might be able to impact, because while I agree that it's beyond what the city can do, there are strategies that individuals will have to do in order to make an input, to have an impact. But I think our larger industries might be able to have a more significant impact, much
Yeah.
like we do with our water and sewer treatment plants. However that might be done, it would be really, I think, helpful to get that input from them.
Yeah, Republic Services, we've definitely received their information because that's a pretty important component of the modeling as far as solid waste. But I agree, I was looking towards some direct outreach, maybe with some of these larger industries, and have a discussion with them, the types of things they're doing at this point, what they think could be effective going forward. And then especially when we get to the point of like the development of the actions, it would be nice to know, like, is this something you're already in alignment with? Is this something that you're considering for the future? So.
It might be helpful if we could do that publicly, so that other, citizens could attend and hear that,
Okay.
hear what the industries are doing. And that city councilors could also attend and hear what some of the larger industries are doing. I think that might be helpful too.
Yeah, we could look at maybe like a forum. We
Yeah.
could talk to our staff. One thing we have a $75,000 budget for this project, so it's a little more limited, but I think there's some internal resources, that's what I've been looking towards, that we could effectively use. So I appreciate that feedback.
Carrie, what is the impediment at the county level to?
Well, they worked on the plan for many years. There were I was on one of the task forces that was made up of city representatives, and I think there's just not the impetus right now with the board to approve the plan. It's just sat there, and they finished it up earlier this year. So as far as what I've been told by staff, it's not likely to get adopted.
Is it just deprioritization or lack of interest, or?
I don't want to speak entirely for their staff, but
Yeah,
I think.
but I
Yeah.
find it very interesting,
Yeah.
given.
Well, we talked about it at a couple of times because
Yeah.
we wanted to dovetail with that, and we
Yeah.
found it was just moving at such a different pace that we weren't able to.
So that's why we've moved forward rather,
With this,
okay.
to get
okay.
progress.
Good.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the comments everybody's made, and wanted to say, I also have a list here of more than 100 HOAs in the city of Wilsonville.
Yeah.
So it would be really hard to go meet with each HOA. And I know anybody who's in one of those knows that everybody in the neighborhood doesn't go, so it's a similar thing. Everybody's very busy.
Right.
And then we also have a lot of people who are not in an HOA. So you can't rely just on HOAs, but perhaps there could be some kind of, I know you have a limited budget, maybe there is some kind of incentive for people like an HOA that has done something. Maybe just make it easy and say, we'd like to hear from, on our Zoom meeting, from any neighborhood groups or HOAs who have come up with an energy saving tool, something, could be anything.
Okay.
And then the same thing with the larger businesses, those that we've had the chance to visit. We've heard, I think it's just about every significant business I've, visited, some of our largest employers, they all have a climate plan of some kind.
Right.
And they probably have what is working best, maybe there's some easy way to do it. I do know everybody's busy, same thing, it's not easy to get everybody there. So maybe it's a Zoom meeting, maybe it's easier than a forum where you have to leave your office and come sit at a table.
Okay. Yeah,
Just tonight.
I'll talk to Bill and, Liana too, and get some of their
And maybe we don't have to
thoughts.
get everybody, get some,
Yeah.
because it's good to see successes out there.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, yes.
Good to see successes, I agree. And I think this is another challenge of this type of project too, is, somewhere in the report, and I'm scrolling through trying to find where it was, but there was a list, maybe it was under that first project understanding, yes. So at the end of that first paragraph, there was kind of a list of all of these things that our city is currently doing. like the streetlight conversion, like the Bee City program, like the transit, all of these different things.
Right.
But this work is woven into so many different departments, so it's not like it's all just in one place. And sometimes, I've gotten emails, and I think other council members perhaps have too, from community members saying, what is the city doing? But this information it's in so many different places because this work is woven through all these different departments, right?
Right.
So it'll be great to have it pulled together in this kind of more holistic space. One question I had is, let's see, I think this was back in the executive summary part of our packet information, the point 4, and you kind of discussed this too. So we have the business as usual, we have the business as planned, right? So
Yep.
do I understand it that we're going to be looking at, okay, here's the projections under this, business as usual, business as planned. And now if we did X, this is how we would see our use or emissions change. Is that kind of the view that we're having?
Yeah.
Right?
it's like-
And then we look at that over
Sorry.
time
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
And then, do we look at the financial impact, or is that a separate piece? Because I know that, like, for instance,
Yeah.
when we were making the decisions on the LED streetlight conversions, like, we looked at the financial impact. Like, this is so important for our environment and our safety and resilience and all of these things, but it has financial impacts too.
Right.
Which, when you start looking at things over time, it really becomes apparent the financial payoffs for making different choices.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, is that part of this, or is that going to be like a step, is that outside the scope of this, and that becomes, okay, here are some actions, and then we look at the financial impacts? I understand this could spin into a very, very, very large project that is outside of the $75,000 budget that you already mentioned, but
Yeah.
I do feel like the finance piece is important when people ultimately are making decisions too.
I'd say it's a mix of that.
Okay.
There will be that aspect of, the financial impacts of doing this. It may not get down to like the minutia of every single action and scoping that out over certainly 25 years. But I've conveyed this to the consultant that I feel it's very important that we have that aspect to the plan because that is part of the decision-making process. So we need to have at least, some way of judging these actions in regards to what will, the impacts be, whether it'll be, a reduction in cost that the city sees, or there might be some slight increase that the city sees to do these, or an increase.
Right, if we
So-
don't do this one thing, then we're
Right.
going to pay for it in another way or something like this.
And
yeah.
they've done enough of these plans that they have a very good relative idea of that.
Okay.
And many times, these actions, are a part of other plans, certainly. And so there will be that aspect of it. I just can't speak, to like every action. It'll be
Right.
clearly defined in that way.
Right, or if it was like a small, medium, large, or something, if
Right.
we had kind of a size category. or
A
something.
relative measure, maybe that, yeah.
It might help us better understand the leverage points that we're trying to get after, too.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right, we're right on schedule. That brings us to our last item, Housing Our Future Conversation Guide. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Give me one moment to pull up a couple slides here. All right. Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and City Council. I'm Kim Rybold, Senior Planner, and I'm here to provide you with a quick update on the Conversation Guide outreach tool. So back in May, we had a work session with you to talk a little more about some different ideas we had for getting a broader cross-section of outreach for the Housing Our Future project to really help us better define housing need in the community. And through that conversation, one of the options that everybody seemed pretty interested in pursuing was the Conversation Guide. And so really the intention behind this document was empowering community members to have conversations amongst themselves about housing, both their experiences with housing as well as, thoughts on housing and housing policy that the city should consider. So what this tool has, and a copy of this tool was included within the packet that was published tonight, is really providing a structure for people to have these conversations. So a little bit of information about the background of the project, some general instructions for hosting a conversation, some general categories of discussion questions that could be included within a housing conversation, as well as some instructions for how to go about holding that conversation and then submitting results back to the city. And so really, while there is some structure provided in this guide, we are also intending that it is flexible and adaptable. One of the features of this tool is that, different from that traditional strategy of doing a survey or an open house, and those often have a lot more formality and structure. This is really intended to be a community-driven, comfortable conversation that you could have with friends, neighbors, colleagues, people in different groups that you might associate with around the city, and really just have an honest conversation and learn something from each other about housing. And so this is intended to be one tool among many that we will be using in this project to help give us a better definition of what Wilsonville's future housing needs are. And that will really help feed in as we continue conversations with the Task Force, Planning Commission, and City Council about ultimately which strategies we think will best help serve Wilsonville's housing needs going forward. And so these strategies are, again, things that we will be looking at in our housing production strategy that the city will strive to implement within the next 6 years. And so this is really a good time to start having these conversations because we can get this feedback, and then as we weigh strategies, this will be a critical piece to help us evaluate which strategies might work best for us in Wilsonville. And so my main ask for you tonight, now that we have this tool ready, is one, we hope that you're going to help us get the word out to the community that this tool is available. People can go to letstalkwilsonville.com under the Housing Our Future page and fill out a short little form to request a copy if they're interested in hosting a conversation. We can either get you one electronically or in print here at City Hall. Or if somebody maybe doesn't want to host a conversation but is interested in participating, we can strive to do some matchmaking there as well. We'll be working with our communications team to publicize this a little more broadly here in the coming couple of weeks. But also you might consider hosting a conversation amongst yourselves, or not amongst yourselves here in a meeting, but amongst people you know, people you interact with here in the city, people who you know are interested in the topic. And, really just having a more organic conversation about what people feel like they need or what experiences they've had finding housing or keeping housing. Those are the types of stories that we think really will provide that human element to this work. And so aside from this being available to anybody in the community that wants to participate and host a conversation, we are also going to be doing some more direct outreach to our city's volunteers on boards and commissions, other civic groups within the community, employers, because we know housing does in fact both employers and employees in the city, and we did hear that feedback from you all at our last work session. And also people who have expressed interest in the project thus far, who have either participated in surveys, participated in stories, or just want to stay updated. And so we're hoping this is a bit of a different tool. It's something that really gives people the latitude to share their experiences as they wish. And we figured that this would be something unique and different for us to try out as part of this project. And so we recognize that this tool does provide some structure, but it is going to take the effort of the community to truly make it a success. And so, with that, I will be a resource to anybody who does want to consider having a conversation, who has questions about how to do it, has questions about how to organize. We as staff are here to support anybody in the community that wants to consider having a conversation. So with that, I'm here to take the next few minutes to answer any questions you might have about how to use this tool, any ideas about spreading the word on the tool that you have. Thank you.
Kim, thank you. And I'm going to speak as the chair of the Housing Our Future Task Force, because there are conversations that are going on in our community regarding housing in general, the future of housing in general and in particular, and also the selection of some of the members of the task force, the Housing Our Future Task Force. And I do want to address one in particular, because I want to talk about the purpose of the task force overall and remind our citizens why. It was put together to bring people with expertise or interest in housing and looking at what tomorrow might look like for Wilsonville, to come together and start looking at housing strategies. And there were people recruited in real estate, both nonprofit and for-profit, agency partners with existing knowledge, and it also sought representation from both local nonprofits and social service providers, and then also a member of council, and actually two of us. But there were multiple developers brought in because they are experts in development. One of them was Palindrome. The others were Northwest Housing Alternatives and Polish Homes. Both of those have developed housing previously in Wilsonville. But the discussion specifically about Palindrome, which seems to be a topic of discussion among certain citizens within our community, I just want to make the record very clear that the developer solicitation process for the Vuela project occurred in 2022. And Palindrome was selected as the city's preferred development partner several months before the Housing Our Future project began in mid-2023. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then the city manager appointed the Housing Our Future Task Force in May of this year, and at which point construction permitting for the Vuela project was nearly complete and the development and disposition agreement was finalized. There is no direct relationship between the Vuela project and Palindrome. Is that correct?
Do you mean
they are
the
separate,
Vuela project and Housing Our Future?
And Housing Our
Correct.
Future.
Yes.
They are very separate and distinct. And Palindrome was selected as one of the members of the task force, separate and distinct from the Vuela project.
That is correct, based on their experience.
Thank you. So the Housing Our Future project will not be completed until mid-2025. And any of the strategies or policies adopted by the Housing Our Future Task Force will not have any impact on the construction of the Vuela project.
That is correct.
Okay, because those plans were developed in 2023, and the land use approval was in January of 2024, before the Housing Our Future Task Force ever came together.
Correct.
Right, great, thank you. And so I just want to make clear to the counselors and anyone else may have questions about that those were very separate and distinct. We are very excited on the task force to know that we have a very broad representation of developers, of nonprofits, and some of those others that I mentioned. And then also the only other thing I'd like to bring out is I'm really excited about where we're going with these conversation starters, because we didn't invent this. This was already, this has already been in use in another community. I don't recall which community
Newport. correct.
So we know that there's a history of it, if the citizens are also interested in talking about the housing, or the future of our housing in this city, this gives them a great starting point. So I would encourage anyone, regardless of your view about the future of our housing, to let this be the place where that conversation starts. So very, very pleased that you chose this as one of the steps of dissemination of information and also information gathering. And I, for one, am really proud to be the chair of that task force. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to just touch on how this idea came. I think you gave us 2 or 3 different ideas in response to the council asking for different ways to reach people. And I actually remember saying that we could volunteer, sorry, I volunteered all of you, to, reach out to groups that we know to get them to get responses, because it is really hard to do that. They're really busy. And so we were just brainstorming, we asked you to research that, and then this is what you came up with. And I really like it. Each one of these events is going to take work. Whoever decides to do it, any person out in the community does need to pick a date, find a couple people to help them probably, and then choose an organization they're going to reach out to and have this conversation. And then, so I appreciate everybody who wants to do it. To host one of these. And it's a relatively short timeline. So for anybody who wants to think about hosting one, when do you think they should start?
I would say this information is currently live and available on the website, so reaching out soon, even if you have questions, if you think you might be interested, I'm happy to provide the information. And it's a couple of months, so
You've got a couple months, but it wouldn't hurt to get started now.
Yeah.
And then how about the scientific data element of this? Because I know it's stories, so it's not, I'm just not guessing, we're trying to imagine it as being scientific but helpful. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is definitely going to be more qualitative input into the project. And I think we do acknowledge that sometimes one of the barriers for people to participate is that feeling that, they're putting themselves out there and maybe they don't want to make something public, like that information about themselves. And so I think, we obviously, the information that comes out of these conversations is information that we will take and gather, but I would leave it to the hosts. We will provide sign-in sheets where people can give us their name and email if they want, but if people want to maintain that level of privacy while providing feedback, I think we can acknowledge that as well. We want to make this kind of a low barrier to participation type of tool. And so, from that scientific element, we, won't have that as much, but I think there are pieces to some of the questions that are asked about people's housing experiences, and I think we'll be able to glean some information just from the stories people share about what types of housing they've lived in, or, there are stories about trying to find housing that, we can say, okay, well, it's obvious this person's been a renter. I mean, many of us have probably been renters and owners at some points in our life, or, so being able to have those different experiences, we can at least, say, okay, well, we have these stories. They come from somebody with a rental background versus an ownership background, or both, and kind of fill in some of the gaps we have.
Okay, thank you. I think Councilwoman.
Thank you, Kim. I know the mayor just pulled out that whole list of all those 100 HOAs, and I'm wondering if first question is this information going to be in the Boones Ferry Messenger?
So we did have a little short snippet in the October Boones Ferry Messenger that points to people to this website. We'll probably run that again in November as well.
And I'm wondering if there are any resources to be able to put together some kind of just a postcard or whatever that could be used that has this information about how to access the guide, what kind of is the concept, I'm thinking about, as I kind of have conversations with people, it would be a lot easier for me to hand them something that says, here's what this project is. If you have a group that you meet with or you would like to get together with and do this exercise, we're looking for those stories. So I don't know whether the city has resources to do that, but it would be really great. And I think even to send one of those cards to the HOAs would be a really great thing, because some of those HOAs may want to offer that as an opportunity for something they would do with their community group, or would have somebody on their board that might want to do it. So anyway, that's kind of my thing.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I do have one more question for you,
Yes.
Kim, while you're here. I didn't bring copies that I had of that 2-page flyer that you made about the Housing Our Future project, but would you mind just summarizing the state of Oregon's role in this project, please?
Sure, yes. And so Goal 10, which is one of the statewide planning goals around housing, requires that cities examine their available 20-year supply of housing on a fixed schedule. There's been some recent legislation passed that has updated some of the requirements of that process. And so essentially this housing production strategy is one of those statutory requirements that is part of doing that work. Wilsonville is currently on the state schedule right now, required to adopt these documents in 2025. So we are on that time frame of moving towards putting together this document in line with the state requirements. That being said, I think my observation is that, there's certainly things we have to do to meet the statutory requirements of this work. And I think this council has given us direction that we want to try to do that thoughtfully, which is what we are hoping to do with the Housing Our Future project.
So just to clarify, and I think I asked this at the last city council meeting, was we don't have the option of saying, we're not going to do anything, and we're going to tell you that our report next year in 25 is we're not going to have any additional housing for the next 20 to 30 years, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. That concludes our work session, and so we need to switch to a different, we can just go right through? Yeah, let's take 5 minutes, so we will reconvene at 7:05. Thank you. Okay. That's it? Good evening. I will call to order meeting of the Wilsonville City Council on Monday, October 7th at 7:05 PM. And we'll start by asking the city recorder to call the roll.
Councillor Linville? Here. Council President Akkerval?
Here.
Councillor Dunwell?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here.
And Councillor Berry is excused.
Thank you. Will everyone please join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Council President Akkerval, may I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda?
Your Honor, I move to approve the following order of agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That brings us to mayor's business. I'll go through some of the recent things, recent events and happenings since we last met. We had a ruling, we received a ruling from the Land Use Board of Appeals regarding the Home Depot discussion, and we will hear about that in more detail from our city attorney under legal business. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed some of this fantastic weather. I know our parks have been busy and we've seen people out walking and enjoying that weather, and hope we have a little more of it. One thing that we had this weekend at the library on one of those nice days was a town hall by State Representative Courtney Neron, and there were about 24 people there who heard about the upcoming 2025 legislative session. The prior week, I think it was about a week before that, our transit director, Dwight Brashear, and I attended and he's our smart transit director, attended the Oregon Legislature's Joint Committee Transportation Statewide Roadshow event, along with several other people. But members of the Joint Committee on Transportation, which includes Wilsonville State Senator Aaron Woods, have been touring the state this summer to hear about transportation issues in various communities. And this is, I would say in my own words, a response to the many discussions we've all had about tolling. And this joint committee is looking at what do people want, what do people in the state of Oregon have to say about how this state is going to pay for its road systems. And so they are just wrapping up this road show. And they've gone to about a dozen cities around the state. Dwight Brashear and I were invited to a roundtable discussion, which is one element of that road show, and a public hearing in the Clackamas County city of Happy Valley. And there were about 40 elected officials, business leaders, and transit agencies and nonprofit organizations in that particular roundtable. Mr. Brashear, who is really an expert in public transit policy, was also invited to participate in the Washington County Joint Committee Roundtable, which was held in Hillsborough the following day. It was on September 26th was the date. So it really provided a great opportunity to discuss a range of transportation funding solutions that people offered. There was discussion about how to communicate with the public about this so that, you know, we know what people want, need, and see, and how they can better communicate with them. There was a lot of discussion about indexing the ODOT taxes and fees to inflation. Taxes being, is it a vehicle miles traveled tax? Is it going to be a gas tax? Whether it probably, you know, much discussion about taxing electric vehicles to make that equitable with vehicles that run on gas. But in any case, there was a lot of discussion about making sure that tool, whichever one they choose or combination, is indexed to inflation, because the gas tax never was, and that's one of our problems. A couple of the ideas that were brought up was also vehicle registration fees, and we really did not, it was not set up in a way that we were able to hear all of the ideas that the Joint Transportation Committee is looking at. They were looking to the public and the members of these roundtables to make suggestions. So after the roundtable, I testified with for the city of Wilsonville about the really how to fund our transportation system. And of course, I brought up the Boone Bridge, and that we think that should be maintained as a big priority, and also look at ways to make the West commuter train extend from Wilsonville to Salem, which would take a lot of cars off I-5 and make it a lot easier for people. And there was also a team of leaders from the Charbonneau neighborhood who testified. So I don't know when that committee is going to be making a summary report to the public, but I look forward to seeing what they have to say and what is the next step there. Another thing that happened that I attended recently was in terms of businesses in Wilsonville. I was invited to an open house on September 11th for a new business. They were so excited to be in Wilsonville. And it's called Oregon Vascular Specialists. And this is a company that provides a specific type of medical care, everything from wound care, vein treatment, and vascular ultrasound labs, and then some day treatment procedures. And they are connected with a much bigger hospital chain for surgeries. But the significance of this open house in Wilsonville was that they have expanded, this is their first office in the Portland area that has this wide range of services, and it is located in a beautiful office building that is on the opposite, across Elligson on Parkway, up at the very end, across from the Mercedes dealership. So it was great to see all these people. Their main office is in Bend, and they see this location as great for attracting people from all across the Willamette Valley and from Portland. And they also have a great view from there. I'd also like to recognize Oregon Institute of Technology, our polytechnical university that's here in Wilsonville. They have once again been named one of the best colleges in the U.S. News and World Report. And so specifically, I read that they were recognized as the second best public college in the West and the fourth best among Western regional colleges. They were also recognized for their outstanding undergraduate engineering program. So I'm really glad that OIT chose to consolidate their Portland campus here in the Wilsonville area. Couple of upcoming events. Tomorrow, on October 8th, Senator Ron Wyden is hosting a Clackamas Town Hall event at Camp Withicum in Happy Valley. It will be his 1100th town hall since he took office in 1986. And I'm actually sorry that I don't have the time for that written down here. Google it. I'm sorry I didn't capture the time. On Wednesday of this week, the city and members of our Kitakata committee will host Consul General Yasu Yoshioka of Japan for a visit to Wilsonville. And this is the first time he has visited Wilsonville as one of the Japanese sister cities in Oregon. So I believe that Councilor Berry and Councilor Linville will join this group. We're going to tour City Hall and then go to the Wilsonville campus of Clackamas Community College, and we'll be greeted by Senator Aaron Woods, who's also a board member there. And then we're going to Wilsonville High School to visit the Japanese language class, and Representative Courtney Neron, who's been a host for the more than 3 decades of our Wilsonville Kitakata Sister City program, is going to greet us there too. And I was able to meet the Consul General last year when we had a group of exchange students. We went up to their office and heard, I want to get the latest statistics, but it was quite remarkable that Oregon is one of the leading states to still have Japanese language classes in their schools. Coming up soon is, on Thursday, I will be participating in another ribbon cutting. It's for a family-owned business called Cambria, and they make quartz countertops. So it's a great opportunity to see a family-owned business expanding in Wilsonville, and they are located in Commerce Circle. Also, it's not ready to visit it yet, but it was great to see the news published in the Wilsonville Spokesman of the Japanese barbecue restaurant, which is the first one in Oregon of this chain. I probably won't pronounce it right, but it's Gyokaku Japanese barbecue, and it is being located, it will locate in the Fred Meyer Shopping Center, and they have 2 suites. You can maybe see it under construction. I think these things take a while to come to fruition. And the business that had been in that location, which is across from where McMenamins is still in that shopping center. They have just moved to another location in the shopping center. And finally, I'd like to note that in our city council packet today is a proclamation for Community Planning Month. And we want to recognize, I'm not going to read that proclamation, but I just want to thank our City of Wilsonville planning staff. We have a long history here in Wilsonville, being one of Oregon's newer cities, and on the edge of the urban growth boundary. There's been a lot of planning here, and the planning practices have really shaped this city and giving us streets and parks and neighborhoods that we use every day. So I want to thank our planning staff during Planning Month. Our next City Council meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 21st, starting at 7 p.m. So that covers my mayor's business, and that brings us to our communications section of our agenda, and we have a presentation about the Beckman Creek Primary Community Enhancement Program Project Update.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Kerry Rappold, the city's natural resources manager. And yes, I want to tell you about a really great story in terms of a project that we did with some students at both Beckman Creek Primary as well as at the high school. And so, as you know, we have this local program through the Community Enhancement Program where we can fund a variety of projects. And this is actually the second project that I've had the opportunity to do with the school district. The first was at Boone's Ferry Primary, and that was focused more around, oh, I'm sorry, sorry. Yeah, I gotta go there. Yep, I jumped ahead. There we go. Sorry. My apologies. Here, we'll get it up on the screen. There we go. And so yeah, this was really a great opportunity to work with the students, and the objective with both of these projects really was to integrate into their curriculum during the school year the study with this project of watershed management. And so we worked with CREST in terms of developing some of the curriculum that the teachers would implement at the school. And so we were working with 5th grade students at Beckman Creek Primary. But it also gave us an opportunity to really engage them in terms of a site visit that they did at Beckman Creek. And they did a little watershed fair at the school site where they had some learning opportunities associated with that. What I'll show you is that they did some wonderful artwork. That was an opportunity to basically look at some themes associated with watershed management. And they put together some drawings and some wording. And it was just really impressive to see what they did. The other piece was actually a 3D watershed model that I think you've seen this before. It was a model that we had created by a manufacturer in a 3D printer. It's a representation of Wilsonville, but it's also the outlying area. What I've always found fascinating about looking at this model is I live in Selwood, so I commute back and forth going along Stafford Road. And I always had this feeling that I was going up, quite a ways in terms of elevation. But once I saw it on the model, I was like, wow, yeah, that is quite a rise as you come up from the river and you go over those hills there. So, and then we had the opportunity to work with the high school students, their National Art Honor Society, to paint the model. And they did a wonderful job with that too. So I'll show you a little bit more about each one of these. They had a lovely day where they did this little watershed fair. They had looked at, some things that are associated with the Beckman Creek corridor and had some microscopes. And, it was just it's a wonderful learning opportunity to kind of do what we call place-based learning, which was really important to both of these projects, and really to connect the students with their surroundings, with the importance of what they look at in terms of the environment. And then this was really just so exceptional, their artwork that they developed, the themes that they were working from, basically what is a watershed, what lives in a watershed, and what can we do to really protect the watershed. And I was just really impressed with their skills and, their thought process and the types of words that they used and types of messages that they were conveying. And so we took this artwork. This project was during the 2021 school year. It was originally supposed to be started in 2019 and 2020, but as you know, in 2020 we had the COVID outbreak, and so we had to delay the project for about a year so they could be back in school and work with us. And then ultimately over the intervening years, we worked with a designer to take that artwork and convert them into these posters. And so every one of these posters here incorporates artwork and also the wording from the students. And so just the power of the message that it conveys is really meaningful and really important. And I'm really impressed with, not only what they did, but what our designer was able to do to bring it all together. And then, like I said, there was this watershed model. We started out basically with kind of an electronic, it was a design that we came up with that used basically a model that we had, that the city had, and then we shared that file with the company that has the 3D printer. And the model is 26 inches by 26 inches, but the printer itself could only print like pieces 13 by 13. So we actually have 4 pieces that make up that model. And that's what it looked like before it was painted. So those are the 4 pieces, placed next to each other. And it represents, the Willamette River, the area south of the river in Charbonneau, Beckman Creek, Coffee Lake Creek, and then some of those surrounding areas with the city. And then ultimately we had this National Art Honor Society spend a number of weeks doing the painting of the model. So we really wanted to depict with the painting, where these water features were, sort of the land uses that are in the area. It's very generalized, but like the gray represents where there's development. The green, darker green represents where there's riparian corridors, where there's agricultural areas. And what's really great about this model is that Crest was able to use it for a number of different activities, and they basically were able to kind of like simulate rainfall on it, and the water flows down through the model and flows from like Beckman Creek into the Willamette River. So they can really see that everybody lives in a watershed. We're all part of that. And anything we do is going to have, an impact to that watershed. So it's a really great learning lesson that way. And then the last piece here is we worked with the library. And for the month of October, they have on exhibit the 3 posters, the watershed model, and then the original artwork that the students did. So there's a description of the project there. And so it's really interesting to go there and to look at their artwork and then to see how that was put into these posters. And then there's a USGS quad that's next to the watershed model. So one of the exercises they worked with the students was kind of this orienting where you could look at a map but didn't see it within a model like that where you can see the topography. And what an interesting learning experience that is. So I'd highly recommend you go over to the library and just see, the full array of what this project provided and what this wonderful grant source can do within our community. And that was it.
Thank you very much. I wish these kids have all gone into different age groups, but perhaps we can find a way to send them a thank you note.
Yeah, they're in high school now. And so I've been trying to track down the teachers and start there that were in, the 5th grade teachers, and then see if we can make a connection through the high school, because we're looking at a spokesman article. It would really be great to bring them into that article and have some quotes from them. So,
Well, thank you very much.
yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our citizen input and community announcements. Our city attorney will read a statement here.
Welcome to the Wilsonville City Council meeting. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on any matter concerning city business or any matter over which the council has control. It is the time to address any items not on the agenda. It is also the time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizen input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. To testify before council in person or virtually, you must sign up either by completing a speaker card at the side of the room or by using the raise hand feature in Zoom. You will need to provide your name, address, and topic you will be discussing. Information on engaging with City Council can be found on the City Council's webpage at ci.wilsonville.or.us/citycouncil. The mayor is the presiding officer and preserves order and decorum during the City Council meetings. Pursuant to Wilsonville Code Section 2.003, subsection 14, those who have signed up to speak during citizen input have 3 minutes to testify. A timer will indicate when your time is done. As a reminder, when you begin your comments, state your name for the record and state your address, or state that your address is provided on your speaker card. The City Council wants to hear from all community members who want to address the council. Please be respectful of others by avoiding talking or other distracting conduct while others are providing their comments to council. The presiding officer or city staff may instruct anyone who is causing a disruption to stop so the council can continue to complete its official business. Additional disruptions may lead to removal from the meeting, so the meeting can continue to proceed in an orderly manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first card is from Elizabeth Peters.
Mayor and Council, Elizabeth Peters, and my address is on the card. We held a roundtable with some of the top business leaders in Wilsonville, a handful of them. We talked about what they like about having a business here and what could be better, the same conversation we've been having all over the city. We heard examples of red tape and onerous requirements, and I'll give you a couple of the examples. A local garden center built a fence as a visual barrier to I-5, and the city required that they also plant arborvitae along the fence on the highway side. Another example, certain auto dealers, but not all, are required to move their vehicles every night and then bring them back out each morning. Among this group, there was a sense of micromanagement by city requirement, which increases costs and headache. So I can't cover the whole conversation, but I can give you the summary of observations from that roundtable. I thought it would be helpful for you. And these are affirmed by input during the town halls that we're hosting every Friday. Number one, there's a disconnect between our city and businesses. One member even asked, have we ever had this type of conversation with the city? And their answer was no. Number two, there's much outside influence and insufficient local input to how we move forward. Number three, there exists a reputation that it's too hard to work with Wilsonville, so let's invest elsewhere. We do compete with other cities, so our approach and our service to businesses needs to be more attractive than other cities. And number 4, we have barriers to entry for entrepreneurs with different hopes and dreams than the big plan. Let's drop the notion that if it's not in the plan, it's not a good idea. It's challenging enough for entrepreneurs to realize their dreams. And small businesses are the backbone of our community, so let's do everything we can to help businesses come here and thrive. Now, there's no question that everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they've been given, and I've only heard positive things about the city's economic development manager. I'm convinced that these are process issues that can be overcome with the right approach and commitment toward businesses. Let me know how I can help.
Thank you. Next card is from Doris Whaler.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight to oppose Resolution 3171 on street naming for Town Center. The voters just turned down funding for the Town Center plan, mostly because the projected housing density would have stuffed about 1,600 new homes into the most trafficked part of our city. Since that vote, the city was forced to admit that the housing density in Town Center might end up being nearly 3 times that amount. We can thank the investigative pressure applied by a new candidate for city council for this revelation. The fact that none of you apologized to him for his shabby treatment in the newsletter, in the city's newsletter, is very revealing. Wilsonville now has 3 seats that will be filled by new people when we hold our election next month. I've lived here since before the city was formed in 1967, and this is the only time since our very first election that I can remember having 3 seats open. What an opportunity term limits have given to voters. With widespread concern over traffic generated by high-density housing in Town Center, voters are entertaining the idea of a course correction in the upcoming election. But I have to ask, why is this mostly lame duck city council trying to push through the naming of streets for a high-density development but that may never be funded? Thank you.
Next card is from Glenn Lancaster.
Hi, my name is Glenn Lancaster. My information's on file on the card. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here to speak on behalf of Wilsonville's senior community and the challenges they face, particularly those living independently in their own homes. In Oregon, seniors generally, am I getting feedback here? Should I step back from this, or?
It's fine.
Is it okay? Okay. In Oregon, seniors are generally experience life expectancy rates that align somewhat with the national averages, but certain areas show higher longevity. For seniors who reach the age of 65, their life expectancy extends by about 18 to 20 additional years, depending on gender and location. Many seniors wish to stay in their homes until end of life. Studies show that doing this extends longevity and quality of life. Wilsonville offers some wonderful resources for seniors, including low-cost meal programs and subsidized transportation options through Wilsonville Community Center, which helps alleviate daily living costs. These services are valuable, but they don't address the significant financial burdens such as home maintenance or rising property taxes that seniors face while trying to remain in their homes. While the Senior Advisory Board provides essential feedback to city leadership on senior issues, there has not been significant action directly aimed at helping seniors to stay in their homes financially. Most financial assistance programs, like Oregon Project Independence, come from state initiatives rather than city-specific actions. I encourage the council to explore new strategies that could provide direct financial assistance to senior homeowners, such as property tax relief, home repair support, and expanding housing programs. These efforts would help our older residents maintain their independence and continue to thrive in our community. I do have one question. It can follow up on an email, what have you. I left my email there as well. Do we have any current programs that we're looking at to help seniors that are in financial trouble, or something in the pipeline to be planned to develop?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll send you the email about it. It's through Wilsonville Community Sharing.
Thank you.
And the city actually supports it, so I'll send you an email. And thank you. Our next card is from Ann Shevlin.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Ann Shevlin. My information is on the card. I am here tonight as president of the Board of Directors of the Charbonneau District. And on behalf of our citizens in Charbonneau, we wanted to thank the council, the mayor, and the city for doing such a nice job in starting the repaving of the walking path along French Prairie. Excuse me, I was saddened when I heard about a year ago that one of our residents had fallen, which is not uncommon, but the resident felt that they had to come before the council, which I'm pleased they did. But the resident was injured and let you know that they were concerned about that path. And I'll remind everyone that that portion of the streets in Charbonneau is owned and maintained by the city. So we really appreciate the fact that paving has begun, especially in an area that is in front of Spring Ridge and Spring Ridge Court. That is our independent and assisted living facility on campus. And so our most vulnerable residents are in that area. So we really appreciate that. We're big walkers in Charbonneau, as many communities have many, many walkers. And Charbonneau was built in the 1970s, so of course there was no code to put in sidewalks. So we have very, very few sidewalks in our community. And on our side streets, where we have very limited sidewalks, most everybody just walks in the street with their dogs and with their baby carriages, et cetera. So working on safety for pedestrians in Charbonneau is very important. So I'm just here to thank you. We really appreciate you getting started on that. And I know there's more work to come on developing safe walking and biking in Charbonneau. And we look forward to engaging with you and the city on exploring some of those possibilities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the cards that I have. And I'm just going to note on this, I think this is still showing on the screen, that says staff and the city council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. So I'm just going to answer what I can easily here right now. On the first one, I think I'll email Elizabeth later. Thank you. And you mentioned Matt Lorenzen, our Economic Development Manager. And so I will ask Matt to get in touch with you because you know who were at the businesses who were at the roundtable. And I would ask him to talk about the efforts to hold roundtables. And it's, again, really hard to get a lot of people there because we're all really busy. But what they've done in the past with Clackamas Community College and with the Chamber, a couple times that I can remember. And I'd love to have more of those roundtables, see more people attend that. So maybe together you can think of some different ways to get more people there. And And so you asked how I could help, so that's something that came to mind. Thank you. On the second one, about Resolution 3171, I think the main thing I wanted to note there is that, thank you for bringing that up. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the street naming there and why that's happening. I think it describes it a little bit in the packet. Town Center Plan was adopted as an element of our comprehensive plan in June of 2019. And so I'm not an expert on how street naming has always happened in the past. I won't be able to tell you all of that, but there are some kind of built-in mechanisms for that. And I think developers can name them, could in the past. Well, we discovered something from a resident a couple of years ago who was about street naming, and it really brought that to our attention. He was moving into, as he described with his family, his dream home, and it was in the Frog Pond area, very beautiful place to live and beautiful house. But he was, I would say, concerned, upset about the fact that through that process, no one trying to offend anyone, the name of the street where his house would be was Columbine. And that upset his family and some of his neighbors about being near a school where you walk to a school at a new house. And they found that it would just, they asked the city how that could happen because of the tragedy that happened at Columbine. So that's just something that if people were sitting around talking about it, they probably would have thought of it. It might not have been named that, but it came through and it was named that. And through a couple of different meetings and some research, we were able to change the name of that street to Ponderosa. But it brought up the street naming. And so that's one thing I have in my memory about that. And then with Town Center, as it says in the packet, there is a building already developed and it's going to have a new street and it needs to have a street name. And so the process of naming streets does need to happen there. And the Town Center plan is part of our comprehensive plan. In May of 2015, there was a ballot measure 3-605 asking for a citizens advisory vote to approve using urban renewal financing as a way to fund the public infrastructure, a lot of it in Town Center. That is something that we have used in Wilsonville since 1992 to fund our public infrastructure. Most of our streets, many, I shouldn't say most, many of our major streets would not have been able to be built had we not used that financing tool. And it, I won't go into the description of it right now, but I will ask our city recorder if you could please post for my materials on today's meeting packet. There is a document on our website called History of Urban Renewal and also the Town Center Strategic Plan, and it describes that. So that was the financing tool that was recommended by the Urban Renewal Task Force and the Urban Renewal Strategic Plan. I think that was the name of that group. They went through several funding mechanisms that could have been used. Would it be bond? Would it be a bond measure? Would it be a tax increase? Could it be done? Could the amount of new, because there are a lot of new streets to be built there. There's a new interchange coming off of Wilsonville Road in response to people's complaints about traffic concerns and safety. There are entirely new driving routes for vehicles in the Town Center plan. Will all of those get built if there's no financing mechanism for the public infrastructure? It will probably take a very long time. They did, you can look at the analysis, it does look at, could you do it with system development charges, which developers do pay a significant amount? No, that would not be enough for that. So that's why the urban renewal tax increment financing was suggested. And it was a citizen advisory vote, and it failed by, I believe, 54 votes. And then the other point that you brought up, I don't have the copy of the documents here, but I will say that, yes, I'm sorry that the candidate is concerned about how the information was presented. I've met with him a number of times, and the city put in a lot of time with him, and I put in a lot of time. The town center plan was done over about 2 years with a lot of community input, and it was adopted by the prior city council, unanimously adopted. It was, it includes a number of different things, as I said, the streets, it has strategic parking included in it, it has a way to ultimately, if the funding is available, if it comes around, there would be a bridge, pedestrian bike bridge, so that people who live and work on the west side could walk over. It has zoning for mixed use, housing. I think of it like sort of like a Bridgeport combination, the look of Bridgeport and the look of downtown Lake Oswego, where you have businesses on the ground floor, housing on the upper floor, but not everywhere. It's about 115 acres. And if somebody owns a business or a building there, they have no obligation to change that building into something else. They may or may not want to. For example, there's a space next door to City Hall here that's owned by Kaiser. I think they've owned it for 10 or 15 years and they've never done anything with it. There's not been a big urgency to build buildings in these spots. With urban renewal financing that can build some of the public infrastructure and the plan to show how we'll be able to make people come together and frequent businesses more easily, and that was developed by the citizens, I think I agree with the plan and the people that developed it. It makes sense to me when you read the town center plan that it will attract more development and you will see some of those buildings develop. It is a 40-year plan. They projected in these business analysts and housing analysts looking at the amount of acreage in the town center plan, they projected that given the rate of growth in Wilsonville over many years, I think it's about 3% if I remember correctly, and given the market for housing and commercial office space, they projected about, I believe it was 800 new housing units in the first 20 years and another 800 in the next 20 years. And those would be, in various locations throughout that area. It also has stipulations for when you get closer to the freeway, they could be taller buildings. When you're closer to where we are here, it would be lower buildings. It would also allow for people who want to walk and like to walk, want to ride their bikes, like to have their kids be able to ride their bikes around Wilsonville. It gives them an opportunity to do that more safely. It has parking incentive money built into it. That money would come from the urban renewal financing mechanism. And as you read the plan, it's $6 million is what they've estimated to be available in an incentive like a match program. So if a developer wants to redevelop a certain area, or maybe 2 of them or 3 of them together, they could work on providing some of the parking structure money and get a match for some of it. So these are some mechanisms to add parking and driving. Now we'll come to the part that is described on the city website under myth busting, and they have described this, this count of the potential residential units that could be added to town center that does show up in 2 different documents in 2 different ways. I just described the one that is in the town center plan. When you're doing urban renewal financing, you also have to produce an urban renewal strategic plan. And that strategic plan is an entirely different effort that looks at in this piece of land, across this piece of land over many, many years, what scope and size of sewer and water infrastructure, stormwater and streets, what is the maximum that you could possibly get, that you could envision, that you would probably get if all of the buildings developed incredibly, like to the absolute maximum, everybody wanted to build everything, and you had the smallest amount of, blank space. That's my description of it. Please defer to the written piece for the more accurate. That projected that it could be possible to have 4,179 units. And those are two different figures for use for two different purposes. The Urban Renewal Strategic Plan is used to identify how much infrastructure funding money could be identified that could be put into an urban renewal plan for that area. And that is where that number came from. It is highly unlikely that that would ever happen. So that is, Doris, the best I can do to explain that verbally, and then you can get more written material. Thank you.
May I just
Yes.
ask you, would you clarify, I know that you mentioned the May vote and what the result was
Yes.
of that vote. Would you clarify what that vote did? It was not.
What it was for. Oh, thank you.
Rather than the town center
Yes.
plan, it was for something else. Right?
Thank you. Thank you. I should make sure that I'm saying that clearly. The advisory vote, ballot measure 3-605, was asking, as it has been a tradition in Wilsonville to do this. All cities do not do this, and the state does not require cities to do this. But in Wilsonville, you might call it as a courtesy, they have put this, the question was, and I, again, don't have it memorized, but basically it was about the urban renewal financing tool, otherwise known as tax increment financing. Should tax increment financing be used to fund a town center urban renewal district? So that would be the financing used to build the new streets, to build a main street, to build blocks that are shorter, that make you want to walk along them, crossings that are the normal size of crossing a street, so on and so forth, and also the bikeways and walkways, so that instead of a big parking lot, you have this infrastructure and that allows you to move around there. But it was only about the financing tool. It was not about should town center plan develop. So I'm not going to be on the council anymore, as you know. I do remember when I ran for council, I will say in 2012, there were 3 seats open, the mayor and 2 council seats. And there were 4 people running for the council and 2 were elected. Okay, so, I think I've covered it. You probably don't want to hear me talk about it anymore, but the town center plan, what I was going to get to is, in my opinion, I think the city could really use several months or a year or something of re-looking at the town center plan, and urban renewal is a really complicated financing tool, and most people don't want to sit around on Saturday morning reading about it. But I'd love to have more people read about it, because it has been a fantastic tool for the city of Wilsonville. It has allowed us to build infrastructure and add housing, add businesses. It was because of urban renewal that the city, long before I was here, was able to build industrial areas to attract the incredible bank of businesses that we have in Wilsonville, starting with Mentor Graphics, now adding up to a $1.6 billion payroll across Wilsonville. It can always improve, it can always get better. And so if we had not ever had urban renewal and people had always voted no on all of the advisory votes, we would not have Canyon Creek Road. We would have to have found other ways to do these things. Wilsonville Road, there's a whole list of roads. I will actually ask to put these 2 summaries of the last 2 urban renewal districts on the packet as well. So it does take a lot, there's a lot to read, and I think it'd be great for everybody to review that again and really dig into it. Last, Ann Shevlin, you talked about the path. Yes, 1970s. I was in high school. I lived in a country town. They did not have sidewalks. But now we want sidewalks. And I just wanted to thank you for saying that. I'm glad that the pathway, which was built in an entirely different time, it was built before the city took it over. And then the city signed an agreement to accept responsibility for maintaining that. And I know that we had our engineer come to city council, maybe it was last spring, I think it was last spring, and there's a packet that goes through many years of studies of that path. What are the different ways we could do it? Various ways to completely change, improve, and expand that pathway. And even could you put a sidewalk through that whole French Prairie? I think it would be great. The city is going to look at this again. We voted to do it again. We put money in the budget for the engineering department to again look at the plans. I think it will really involve talking to the Charbonneau residents. Everybody isn't going to agree. I don't think everybody has agreed in the past. Some people may not even want to have the pathway at all. Other people really want to have a much better pathway. So it's one of these examples where it'd be great to come to a consensus and then look at the cost. The range of cost of the solutions you could bring there is, it's a very wide range. But I hope that this year, the city and Charbonneau will be able to come to a decision on which solution is best and how to fund it. So I think I've answered all the questions that I can for now. And that brings us to councilor comments, starting with Council President Aukervall.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, I had my first, since our last council meeting, I had my first meeting with the Regional Solutions Advisory Committee. And this is a group that LOC, the League of Oregon Cities, nominated me to be a representative, a city representative to that committee for providing a city perspective for the counties of Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas counties. And it is an advisory committee to the governor's office, looking at economic development and community development. Identifying different priorities and strategies. And so our first initial meeting, because that's a pretty big topic, we had discussion on 3 different issue areas that the governor has elevated to this group, and then we'll kind of add to that list of 3 areas. And identify some specific steps that could nestle within those different bulleted issue areas. So the issue areas that have already been identified is housing production, community resilience, and infrastructure. I strongly commented on the connection between infrastructure and housing production, because that's something that we understand in our city. The infrastructure is needed for housing production. And so if the state has goal of creating housing production, then we need infrastructure in order to do that. It's not just merely an issue of having land available or rules in place, but you got to have the infrastructure there as well. So tried to underscore those comments and those linkages, and we will continue to meet even yet this month, I believe. Let's see, our DEI cultural calendar for the month of October. So the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee invites the community to celebrate each month a number of culturally significant dates and events. And in October, we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which of course began last September 15th through October 15th. The National Disability Employment Awareness Month, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, World Mental Health Day, National Coming Out Day, and Indigenous Peoples Day are all this month as well. And the city is hosting a Fall Harvest Festival on October 19th, that's Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is in the Upper Memorial Park near, and we've done this for a number of years. It's a really great event. There's going to be free pumpkins that are actually local from Frog Pond Farms. That's pretty cool. Balloon artists, petting zoo, face painting, 35 craft vendor booths. I wonder if that's new. That's great. There's a kids costume parade with the Parks and Rec staff, some live music, and a horse and carriage ride. This has been a very popular event in the past, so parking has been pretty busy. And they're encouraging, it's a big family event, so if you're there with little ones, drop the family off at the Upper Memorial, that roundabout there that's near the playground, and then you can park your car at Wilsonville Library or the community center or the Lower Memorial Park area, or even here at City Hall, because those parking places take the bus, walk. There's different options. Those parking places might get filled up. But I know in the past too, we've had staff helping kind of direct and let people know when that parking lot is full. So it's a great time, and I hope we have some fantastic weather like we did this last weekend. That would be terrific. Keep everyone's face paint from melting and their costumes dry, perhaps. So hope everyone has fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Linville.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to clarify for a comment that was, I think, relating to me, that was made in our citizen input area. And I just wanted people to understand that my decision not to run again for city council did not have anything to do with term limits. I'm eligible for one more term, as is Councilor Ackerval, and both of us chose not to run again. So 2 of the 3 vacancies has nothing to do with term limits. So here is my report. On the 16th of September, I attended the ODOT Boone Bridge open house, and I think it was a good meeting for all of the people who attended, who had an opportunity to see the options that are being looked at for replacement of the Boone Bridge. What was a little discouraging is that ODOT was very clear that they have no money to do that replacement of the Boone Bridge. I did ask the ODOT official that was here, given that Highway 217 has been worked on for a number of years, and where did that money come from? And it's not still finished. And she indicated to me that that was a special allocation that was made by the legislature for 217. And so that may be something that a future council may want to pursue, is with our connections that we have with our legislators, and especially one that is on the Transportation Committee, that we look at asking for a special allocation for that bridge in order to make it happen. I also attended on the 28th the Boone's Ferry Park opening, and I really want to say congratulations to our Parks and Rec Department for an incredible job that they did on that accessible park. I know that some of our citizens were a little concerned that day that there was a lot of traffic moving down that down Boone's Ferry. And my guess is that as the use of the park goes on, that it won't be as crowded as it was on the day of the opening and the ribbon cutting. But it is an incredible place, and to watch those kids who were playing on equipment that is accessible to children with differing abilities was really a wonderful thing to see. On the 30th, I participated in my final Metro Community Enhancement Committee. What a great committee that has been, and I wanted to just thank the mayor for the opportunity to serve on that committee over the number of years that I have. It is money that we get from Republic Services through Metro. It's based on the amount of wet waste that goes through our station in Wilsonville. And so we have access to money to do some enhancement projects, and the projects through the years have just been wonderful. We are going to be going out soon with those applications, and I just wanted to encourage our community groups, if you've got something that you can think of that it would enhance our community in a number of ways, that information will be up on our website. You can also contact probably Zoe Mumbert at the city manager's office, and we are just looking at ways that we can get more applications and more opportunities to distribute that money. Then on the 6th, this last weekend, were two of my favorite days, events happening, and that was the Shred Day, the annual Shred Day here at City Hall, and that is always a really popular event and an opportunity for our citizens to get rid of some sensitive documents that they have collected in their homes. And that was also the day that Republic Services held the Fall Bulky Waste Day event, which is another popular event and often has backup all the way on to Ritter Road. This year we had 323 vehicles drop off 40.5 tons of bulky waste, such as old appliances, worn out mattresses, chairs, any number of things. A good opportunity to clean out your garage. The total volume of bulky waste this fall was about 12% less than average, which is about 46 tons. And I don't know, maybe we're getting cleaner maybe we're cleaning things out. But we wanted to say particularly thank you to the Wilsonville Rotary Club, who, it was the Rotary, who volunteered to pick up bulky waste items for those citizens who had no vehicle to transport the large items. They made 23 stops and dropped off 10 loads at Republic Services. So for some of our citizens that just didn't have access to that. As the mayor indicated, on the 9th, I will be attending that's Wednesday this week, the Council General visit here in Charbonneau, and it will be great to reinforce our sister city relationship with them. And then on the 11th of October, I wanted to just let our citizens know that we have a Festival of Arts that is going to be held over that weekend. It is the Charbonneau Arts Association is hosting the annual Festival of Arts, and the event starts on Friday with a paid admission gala, and it follows on Saturday and Sunday with free admission to the art festival. And it's an incredible event. A lot of work goes in, and it is also, there are exhibits by the high school students from Wilsonville and Canby High School as well. The proceeds from that art festival benefit both Wilsonville and Canby High School arts programs. This will be the 40th anniversary of this all-volunteer nonprofit Charbonneau Arts Association, and I'm happy to say that the city is able to give them some of our community enhancement monies as well. I will also, on the 15th, be attending the Aurora Airport Advisory Committee meeting, which was originally supposed to be held in September and was postponed until the 15th of October. So lots of input that the aviation department has received as a result of their options, that the most recent set of options, and so it'll be interesting to see what that information is. And that is my report.
All right, thank you. And you just reminded me of a piece of information I didn't have about Bulky Waste Day. Goes to one of our questions today. People who bring things to Bulky Waste also are asked to bring a donation for Wilsonville Community Sharing. That can be used to help seniors and others who are in need of help paying utility bills and so forth. So I think maybe in our Boone's Ferry Messenger or something later, we can have a summary of what was brought in. With that, Councilor Dunwell, please.
Great. I'll tell you when. Okay, I'll be just a second. Gosh, the transportation's everywhere these days. I know there's a lot of conversation going on about it, not only in Wilsonville, and there was that amazing event of being able to have it ODOT here, locally here, to speak about the Boone Bridge. And the French Prairie Forum is also discussing that. And the French Prairie Forum is a group of mayors and councilors around Mid-Valley, the Mid-Willamette Valley. And I've mentioned who they are before in the past, but the topic this last month was transportation. And it was specifically about the Boone Bridge because it will impact those other cities because they do take I-5. And then also, just a general conversation about ODOT and the future of transportation. It's led by the Leo companies, and they've done a fantastic job of moderating those, and it is a great opportunity for us in Wilsonville to look at through everything that's going on here through a different lens, because we are in just direct conversation for an hour with some of these other elected leaders in Hubbard and Donald and Canby and so many of these other locations. So I will be meeting again with them before council meets again on the 16th, I believe it is, of October, which will topic to be determined at this point. And then the other thing, okay, I'm ready for you. I have photos tonight because a week ago last Friday, I was fortunate enough to be invited to be one of the public officials invited by TVFNR to be actively involved in the fire team for 27 hours. And so we all had to wear turnouts, the full gear. I shed mine at one point because they were hot and heavy. And I failed the fire hydrant test. I did not get the water going through that fast enough. So can you step back just one more? But we did so many other things. So I want to mention the gentleman next to me in the light blue shirt is one of the city councilors for Tigard. The woman next to him is from Beaverton, and then we have the trainers and one of the chiefs at the far right, and then one of the trainers and one of the captains on the far left. And it was a wonderful day. Can you go ahead and go to the next one? Thanks. So we got to put out a pallet fire. It gets really hot. It's like 3,000 degrees. It's just stunning when you realize how powerful that hose is and the amount of effort and work and speed that these professionals put forth in order to serve us. And then the next one. We also, through the training, we used the jaws of life to completely dehood a car and all of the steps involved. And the amazing part was there were 9 of us doing this, and they had us work really fast. It probably took about 25 minutes. They said they get it done in about 3. They're fast, they're powerful, and they are truly saving lives. And one of the individuals, elected officials who was there, was actually extracted out of a car in a situation similar to this by the jaws of life. And so for her, it was a very, an emotional experience for her to see how somebody like you or me are really, our hands are tied behind our back, and the professionalism of those individuals to be able to get in there and do everything they need to do. And then the next one is, oh, that's me. I couldn't do the fire hose by myself, so I needed to have actual trainers help me because it is heavy and it is powerful. And we actually were able to put down part of the pallet fire, and of course it roared right up. That tank that's on one of the trainers right next to me, there's a reason I'm not wearing one, because they are so heavy and so big that when they put it on me, I kept tipping back. So they had to actually take it off of me because it was too much. But those are amazing trainers, and that resource that we have as a city with TVF&R is, I can't applaud them enough. And then I think I've got one more. This is the team that trained us. So what we had, if you go to the final one, we had 2.5 hours of classroom training, and it was actually letting us know what they do, how they're funded, what the value is that they bring to the cities, and that is actually the chief for TVF&R, who's actually giving us TVF&R 101 at that moment. They reenacted an actual heart attack, and they actually called 911 and brought in real paramedics, and actually did it on a dummy, of course, but it was very intense, very emotional, and it was stunning at how quickly they moved. These are the premier members of public service for us in our community. We don't think about them until we need them, and then they just show up. And they're training continually. They're finally, they have a large group of individuals that are at captain level or chief level that are all at retirement age, which is 25 to 30 years. And so they're really having to cycle through a new group and bringing a lot of folks through that training. And when I look at what I did, and oh, and by the way, then we went to a firehouse. And so I actually slept at the firehouse that night, ate dinner with our professionals, and actually was able to be on the truck. And during training, I drove an actual fire truck, but they wouldn't let me drive one at the station. But it was an amazing event. I applaud Wilsonville for being part of the TVF&R group. Some of there are some communities that are not involved, like Hillsborough, but it is all of the communities, whether it's Beaverton, Newburgh just joined, the reach of TVF&R is huge, and they're an extremely valuable asset to our communities. So super excited that I have this opportunity. It's rare, and it's one of the cool parts about being an elected official. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda. Will the city attorney please read the titles?
Resolution number 3166, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a goods and services contract with Anderson Pacific, Inc. for replacement and maintenance of city water features. Resolution number 3170, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville acting in its capacity as the local contract review board, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Tyler Technologies for converting to a cloud-based install of the city's enterprise resource planning, ERP software. Resolution number 3171, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville amending resolution number 1924 and adopting a street naming policy for the Wilsonville Town Center, and minutes of the August 5, 2024 City Council meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
I will second the motion.
we've all read these materials and discussed them in advance. Given that, I will ask for a vote on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That brings us to public hearing for Resolution 3172.
Resolution number 3172, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing a supplemental budget adjustment for the fiscal year 2024-25.
Tonight, we will have a public hearing to consider Resolution 3172. The order of procedure for tonight's hearing is set out in detail in our city code. In brief, we will start with the staff report. Next, the public will be asked to provide testimony. I will ask everyone who signed up in advance to testify first in the order in which they signed up. Then I will ask if anyone present in council chambers would like to testify. And then I will ask anyone who is on the Zoom meeting who has not testified but would like to testify to do so. For those in the audience, please fill out a speaker card and provide it to the city recorder. For those on Zoom, if you want to provide public testimony remotely during this meeting, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or press *9 on your telephone to notify the city recorder you wish to speak when the time for public testimony is called. If you are having difficulty with these instructions, you may call 1-669-900-6833, and when prompted, enter webinar ID number webinar ID number 815-3605-6468. Both numbers are shown on the screen. When you begin your testimony, please state your name and address for the record, or you may state that your address is provided to staff. After each person testifies, counselors may pose questions to me to be addressed to the person who has testified or to staff to clarify any information that was conveyed in the testimony. Once the City Council has heard from everyone and the City Council is satisfied it has all the information it needs to render a decision, the public hearing will be closed. Council deliberates, and I will announce the result. We wish to hear from everyone who wants to testify. However, we will request that you refrain from repeating testimony already given by someone else. If you agree with what someone before you has said, please provide your testimony indicating that you concur with what has previously been said. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. We will time the testimony and provide you with a visual warning when there is 1 minute remaining. The public hearing is now open. Our staff will now provide the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Catherine Smith, Assistant Finance Director. Before you this evening is a budget supplemental. As outlined in your council packet, this budget supplemental includes most predominantly the reappropriation or rollover of funds from the prior fiscal year for capital improvement projects, the reappropriation or rollover of funds for non-capital improvement projects, for example, a vehicle, and any new requests as outlined on pages 208 and 209 of your council packet. And that concludes our presentation. At this time, we'd be happy to open up for any questions.
Well, we have a detailed multi-page report here in our packet. Does anyone have any questions for our staff? Okay.
Can I do have a question.
Yeah.
Generally when we approve the budget, those probably did not include, that budget did not include new requests, correct?
Correct. These are new requests since that time.
Since that
or
time.
increases, yes.
Right. So those were unanticipated, which happens, that comes up periodically in any organization where things don't work correctly and need to be replaced or that kind of thing. So the new requests, it looks like total, the smaller portion of the budget, that most of them is the rollover, the rollover money.
Correct. As outlined at the top of page 208, new requests are 2.9 million. In part, that is to record, so it was 1.4 million as outlined on the top of page 209 to record the road system development charges, SDC contribution for the transfer from transit for that Todd project.
So the majority of this money is capital project rollovers, which were budgeted in the previous
Correct,
year
yes.
budget, correct?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And thank you too. Maybe you can just go over the rollovers for our audience here. We have a paragraph on them, on the major items. I can see one was the Beckman Dip Bridge, $3,035,759 was rolled over to spend in this year.
Yes. Zach, would you like to speak to the three large projects?
It'd be good to hear a little bit about the top three.
Yeah,
rollover
absolutely.
projects.
So there's three top projects that attribute to a majority of that request. The Beckman Dip Bridge, the water treatment plant, and the Beckman Road street improvements.
So you'd like to know more about those projects?
Just a little
Sure.
description on how rollover, these are big numbers, so just a little sentence or two on each one, please.
Yeah, so Zach Weigel, city engineer. So the rollovers are, like Catherine said, money that we had budgeted last year that we didn't expend as much as we had thought we were going to. So we just need an action to roll that money into the next fiscal year.
And we still need to continue working on the
That's
Beckman
right.
Dip Bridge.
The bridge is still under construction, so it's not an increase in funding, it's just rolling it over to the next fiscal year.
And then the other two, water treatment plant expansion and Beckman Road street improvements.
Yeah, so the water treatment plant is finishing up construction. I think it's around 80% complete right now. There's been some delay in getting some of the final equipment, so we didn't finish it up last year like we had anticipated, so it's rolling over to this next fiscal year.
I remember that was a manufacturing or supply chain delay that was still.
Yeah, supply chain, it's a supply chain delay, yep. And then similar with Beckman Dip Bridge, the Beckman Road street improvements. With that project, because it was a progressive design build project, we budgeted the entire amount of the project at the beginning of the project, just knowing that it was going to take a few years to construct. So we're just rolling over that amount into the next fiscal year.
All right, thank you.
So if I could ask just one more question while Zach is up there. So would you anticipate that there will be in the future additional rollover from 2 years ago that will roll over in future years?
So we'll have we have our budget for this year. This will amend that budget from rolling over from the previous budget, unspent funds. So that will give us a new total budget for each of these projects. If we don't spend all of that funding and the project still isn't complete by the end of this current fiscal year, yes, we will roll that money into the next budget cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Councilor Dunwell?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I've got you up here, Zach. The TOD, this is on the new requests, just two questions for you. On the TOD, the 1.4 million on the SDC contribution, can you just provide a little explanation of that? And then also on item G, the road capital improvements for Stafford Road for the additional $1 million. Can you just give us a little bit more background on those two elements?
Sure. I might ask Amanda to help with the TOD project, but I believe that is part of the agreement that we are, the city is funding a portion of their transportation development, their system development charges for that project. So that is moving that's just providing some of that funding that, to the SDCs for that project.
So is that a new request because we didn't foresee it?
That's just, I don't think the details of that. So keep in mind that when we put together the budget, it was like last February when that was done. So I don't think the agreement had been completed by then.
We had not voted on it.
Yeah. So we have to wait until that agreement was completed before we could actually budget.
Got it.
Yeah. And then those last three, for Stafford Road, that's, so with one of the developments in Frog Pond, it's triggering the need for intersection improvements at Stafford and Frog Pond Lane and at Brisbane Street. So in order for that development to move forward, we need to budget a project for that to improve those intersections. And that's what those three projects are doing.
Okay, good. Just thank you for the explanation. It's just, those are.
If I may add some context also on the SDCs, because I do think this is important given some of the conversations around the transit-oriented development project. One of the things that is very common with affordable housing developments is for cities to waive SDCs. And we were very intentional in not waiving SDCs. What we did was, what we sought to do was to subsidize the SDCs that would otherwise be paid by the affordable housing component of this project. So the city staff were able to locate through our transit fund unrestricted funds that could pay for the SDCs that you see in other jurisdictions would waive. So in essence, we are making that SDC contribution whole through this fund transfer because it does support, it is a transit-oriented development project, and transit had additional unrestricted funds that we could utilize for this project. So I do want to highlight it because it's not something that you normally see in these types of affordable housing components, where we are able to make sure that our SDC fund wasn't crippled by that.
And this was possible because this is a transit-oriented
Exactly.
development, and it did receive some funding for that otherwise as well.
Exactly.
Good question. Any more questions? Okay. I have to go through this very specific procedure, so bear with me. For public testimony, we will start with the people who signed up in advance to testify. I don't have any cards, okay? Do we have anyone on Zoom or on the phone wanting to testify? Okay. I'm going to ask again to get through our very detailed procedure. Does any counselor need anything clarified regarding the testimony? Well, no, we didn't have a speaker, didn't have testimony, excuse me. So we have no more people who want to testify. Does any counselor need anything clarified further? I'm not seeing that. Does the staff have anything further to add to the record at this time?
No.
Okay. Hearing no further questions and everyone having testified, I hereby declare this public hearing closed. It is now time for the council to consider Resolution 3172. Do I have a motion on Resolution 3172?
Your Honor, I move to adopt resolution number 3172.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
The motion has been made by Councilor Linville and seconded by Councilor Dunwell to adopt Resolution 3172. Is there any discussion? I want to thank our finance team and also all the members of our department for their diligent handling of the budget and staying on top of these things. It's what has gotten the city budget awards year after year. So thank you for this. So hearing no further discussion or commentary, I will call for a vote on the motion. Those in favor?
Mayor, You need a motion first.
Oh, you see, I'm really getting punchy.
I made a motion.
Oh, I did. This time I did it.
This is my fault. I apologize. Okay.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second, yes. We've been talking a lot here. So, hearing no further discussion or commentary, I will call for a vote on the motion. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes 4-0.
I was going to ask for a little mental health counseling there for a minute.
Sorry. I think I need it.
It's easy to do. I have forgotten to ask for the vote. Okay, we will now have first reading on ordinance number 894.
And Mayor and Council, the presentation for both ordinance number 894 and 895 will be together, but you will vote on them separately, so I will read the titles of both. This is the first reading of ordinance number 894, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville declaring and authorizing the vacation of approximately 0.35 acres, 15,275 square feet of public right-of-way that is no longer needed for the westward extension of Southwest Bailey Street from Old Town Wilsonville to Southwest Kinsman Road in the central part of the ORPAC property. And this is the first reading of ordinance number 895, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville approving a zone map amendment from the City of Wilsonville Future Development Agricultural Holding, FDA-H, zone to the Planned Development Industrial, PDI, zone on approximately 8.66 acres at the ORPAC Properties location at 9655 Southwest 5th Street.
I will call to order the public hearing regarding proposed ordinance numbers 894 and 895 on first reading. Do any members of the City Council wish to abstain, declare a conflict of interest, or report any ex parte contact or any information gained outside of the hearing?
No.
No, and I will add that I drove by the site and looked at it, but I have not talked to anyone. And so I will answer no to that question as well. Have all members familiarized themselves with the application? Yes. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the City Council? For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the City Council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, based on that issue. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria that staff will describe or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which you believe apply to the decision. City Council meetings are open to the public. This meeting may also be attended remotely in accordance with Oregon law. Information regarding how the public can attend this meeting remotely and give testimony is posted at City Hall and on the city's website. Notice was given that testimony could be submitted for the record in advance in writing by emailing or mailing it to the city recorder. Testimony may be submitted in writing at any time prior to the closure of the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no further testimony in any form will be accepted. If you want to provide public testimony remotely during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your telephone to notify the city recorder you wish to speak when the time for public testimony is called. If you are having difficulties with these instructions, you may call 1-669-900-6833, and when prompted, enter webinar ID number 815-3605-6468. Both numbers are shown on the screen. When called upon to testify, state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the City Council, simply indicating you agree with the prior testimony given by a speaker you identify as sufficient. At this time, I call for staff to present the proposal and list the applicable substantive approved criteria. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and councilors. My name is Cindy Luxhoy, Associate Planner, and I am here tonight to present for your review ordinance numbers 894 and 895, which are a right-of-way vacation and zone map amendment for the ORPAC properties in Southwest Wilsonville. As required by statute, I would announce that the applicable review criteria for ordinance number 894 are included on page 2 of the right-of-way vacation findings in Exhibit A of Attachment 1 of the council staff report. Review criteria for ordinance number 895 are on page 2 of the zone map amendment findings in Exhibit B of Attachment 2 of the council staff report. The ORPAC property owned by Inland Pacific Properties, LLC, is located at 30160 and 30170 Southwest ORPAC Avenue, 30445 Southwest Boones Ferry Road, and 9655 Southwest 5th Street in Southwest Wilsonville. It's comprised of 10 tax lots totaling 27.42 acres. The applicant has operated as a building products wholesale distributor at the subject site for about 40 years, with most of the recent expansion occurring in 2005, with addition of a second building. The ORPAC application, case file number DB24-0001, resolution number 436, was reviewed by the Development Review Board at its September 9th, 2024 meeting. The application includes the actions listed on this slide. These actions are to bring the property into compliance with code standards specifically related to a parking area that was constructed between 2016 and 2017 south of the approved ORPAC building and storage area without required land use approvals. In addition, the actions are to prepare the southern part of the property, which is either vacant or in rural residential agricultural use, for future development. 2 of these actions are recommended by the Development Review Board for City Council approval, including vacation of a portion of city right-of-way referred to as Tract A in the central portion of the property, and zone map amendment to rezone the southern part of the property. I'll describe each of these actions in a bit more detail in the following slides. The image on the left indicates the area of proposed right-of-way vacation. On the right is a detail of the Tract A vacation area. Prior land use decisions in the late 1980s required dedication of a 31-foot wide right-of-way along the length of the southerly property line of Parcel 2 of Partition Plat number 1990-92, which is the area previously developed by ORPAC. The right-of-way was subsequently dedicated as Tract A of the Partition Plat and intended to be used for extension of Southwest Bailey Street west to connect with Southwest Brown Road. In 2016, by resolution number 2610, the City Council selected Southwest 5th Street, not Southwest Bailey Street, as the preferred final alignment of the east-west connector. As a result, the existing public right-of-way dedicated in Partition Plat number 1990-92 is now redundant. Therefore, the applicant is requesting vacation of the right-of-way, which will enable it to integrate Tract A into future development plans. The PDI zoning designation will be applied to the vacated right-of-way. The lot line adjustment approved by the Development Review Board on September 9 is illustrated on the left of this slide by the solid red lines and dashed red arrow. This action would move the lot line between tax lots 101 and 600 west to follow the center line of Coffee Lake Creek. As shown in the zoning map on the left and colored blue, the previously developed part of the ORPAC property is zoned Planned Development Industrial. The zone map amendment proposes to rezone tax lot 101 as adjusted by the lot line adjustment described in the previous slide, as well as tax lots 200 and 300, outlined in shaded yellow on the zoning map. The illustration on the right of the slide shows the area to be rezoned, bordered in pink. The rezone request would change the zoning from future development agricultural holding to planned development industrial, consistent with the comprehensive plan map designation of industrial. This action also would prepare this part of the site for future development, which would be subject to additional land use review at the time of proposed development. Based on the information presented, staff recommends approval of the right-of-way vacation and zone map amendment requests. And this concludes tonight's presentation by staff. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
So at this point, does staff have any, or does council have any clarifying questions for the staff?
I'll do a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. And I think it's, well, from the information in the packet and your presentation this evening, am I clear and correct in understanding that this is not for proposed development, but this is looking at the zoning of the land in this space?
Correct. The desire is to bring it into compliance. Well, there's several components to the project, but related to the zoning, it's to rezone it so that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and to prepare the property for development in the future. But that would go, that portion of the property would undergo additional land use review.
Right.
Yeah.
And so since this is development in the future is not part of this decision, I understand that. But do we know anything about a timeline for development in the future, or has that not been discussed in any terms at this point?
Do you know, Sid? The consultant, the authorized rep for the owner is here tonight, and he could probably answer that question.
How about we wait?
Yeah.
We can,
Yeah, we do have a place on our agenda.
Okay.
You'll get a chance once that.
Good
Thank
question.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not seeing any more clarifying questions right now. Any comments from the city attorney?
None, Mayor.
The applicant may make their presentation now. Thank you. And you can use the chair, the podium's fine.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Sid Hariharangat. I'm a land use planner with McKenzie Architecture, located at 1515 Southeast Water Avenue, Suite 100, Portland, Oregon, 97214. Cindy, thank you, and staff, thank you for the presentation tonight. It's a very complicated land use application, and really the effort here is to get the site back into code compliance, as well as staff has said, prepare the site for future development. And tonight I just want to comment on Councilor Ackervall's comment about timing of future development. So the intent with this application is just to anticipate future development. There's no current set timeline for any facility. Staff noted any future development that would involve construction of a building or any other associated structures would require future land use applications, approvals, and compliance with the code standards at that time. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, the further notes on this. So we're just kind of tidying things up at this point.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, well, this is our chance to ask the applicant any other questions, but I think you covered everything. Do you have one?
Yes, I do.
Oh, there it is.
Thank you. I do have just a follow-on question. When I drove by the property, it appears that there is a residence, is correct?
Correct.
And so I know that this will, the future state will be that, this is expansion, available for expansion. And I did see that in the report that there were statements of assent or agreement from the property owners. Who owns that property?
So that's a great question. There is a property, it's on current tax lot 200 there along Southwest 5th Street. And so that entire property, north of 5th Street, east of Kinsman, and from the kind of existing ORPAC building south is owned by an ORPAC or one of the entities that consist, are part of the ORPAC Corporation.
So that's just rental property then?
Correct.
Got
It's a property that's under control by one of the LLCs.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do any members of the audience wish to speak for the applicant? Seeing none. Hearing no further questions.
Mayor, do you just want to make a general call if there's anyone who wants to speak on the application itself?
Okay.
Both on Zoom and in person.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
So I just want to ask if we have anyone on Zoom or on the phone or anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on the application. Okay? And council has no further questions. Hearing no further questions and everyone having testified, I hereby declare this public hearing closed at 8:50 p.m. on October 7th. It is now time for the council to consider ordinance number 894 on first reading. May I have a motion and a second for ordinance 894 on first reading?
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance number 894 on first reading.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion, ordinance number 89, we have a motion to adopt ordinance number 894 by Councilor Linville and seconded by Council President Aukervall. Is there any discussion? Nope. Well, I appreciate that this pretty thorough look at this property to basically get it to where it should be, so the business owner can consider what they want to do with it in the years ahead. That's all we're doing. Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, I call for a vote on ordinance number 894 on first reading. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. We will, again, we will have a second reading of this ordinance at our next meeting. It is now time for the council to consider ordinance number 895 on first reading. May I have a motion and a second on the ordinance 895 on first reading?
Your Honor, I move to approve ordinance number 895 on first reading.
Adopt.
Adopt.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Councilor Dunwell and seconded by Council President Aukervall to adopt ordinance number 895 in first reading, on first reading. Is there any discussion?
I actually do just have a comment, knowing that ORPAC has been located as a business within Wilsonville for a considerable amount of years, and they still see the future, their future growth still located within the Wilsonville area, to the point of requesting this type of change to allow them to continue to grow at some point in the future. As a counselor, gives me continued confidence that businesses do want to thrive in Wilsonville and stay here. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call for a vote on ordinance number 895 on first reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Now, that brings us to city manager's business.
Just wanted to announce that I will be attending the League of Oregon Cities Conference next week, Wednesday through Friday.
And I will be there too. And that brings us to legal business.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you indicated in your mayor's comments, I wanted to touch base with the council on the recent Land Use Board of Appeals decision. So on October 1st, 2024, the Land Use Board of Appeals issued its opinion and order in the appeal filed by the Home Depot against the city of Wilsonville. As the council recalls, the Home Depot filed 2 applications with the city, one seeking confirmation of the existing non-conforming use occurring at 29400 Southwest Town Center Loop, and one seeking a determination that Home Depot's proposed use is a continuation of the existing non-conforming use. Home Depot appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals both of the council's determination of the existing non-conforming use occurring at the location as of June 2019, and the council's determination that Home Depot's proposed use was not a continuation of the existing non-conforming use. The Land Use Board of Appeals affirmed both of the City Council's decisions and denied each of the Home Depot's 2 assignments of error. The decision is available on the Land Use Board of Appeals website. And as a final note, the Home Depot has not filed a development application with the city that would allow the city to consider any merits as to Home Depot's presence on the site. The city is limited to considering the applications that were filed.
Thank you.
I do have 2 other items that I wanted to touch base on. The first being that, gosh, it all runs together now. I think it was a couple weeks ago, I attended the International Municipal Lawyers Association annual conference, and in kind of a whirlwind was asked, I was going as just a member to go listen to some great speakers, but I got pulled into a panel on camping and all of the legal ramifications of the recent Supreme Court decision. It was a really interesting topic, a really good discussion that was had. And then this week, I will be attending the Oregon City Attorneys Association annual conference in Newport, where I will be presenting on the benefits of law student programs in our practices. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a reflection on your diligence and good work that you're being asked to speak on that. And I know one of our legislative priorities was to, I think, seek some clarity from the state legislature on the camping ordinances. Was that part of the discussion?
I did bring up the Oregon example as something for other attorneys to keep an eye out for, because the Supreme Court did note in the oral argument that, and in its opinion, how states have the ability and localities have the ability to regulate as Oregon has. So it did come up in discussion, and as you mentioned, the League of Oregon Cities is working on, potential legislation to address the state legislation that's in place.
Great. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to just say again how much I appreciate our whole council, all of you, working together, and our staff, and our city attorney, our city staff, parks, and Clackamas County Health and Human Services staff to come up with a camping and ordinance regarding overnight camping in response to the state requirement that in this amount of time, it's a very difficult subject. It's not to say anything's been solved by any means. It needs constant attention. But I am continue to be pleased that we have developed a relationship with Clackamas County's Health and Human Services Department, also Heart of the City, our Wilsonville Community Sharing, our law enforcement, our park staff, that not only has helped the situation be managed quite well, but most importantly, has connected people in need with services and housing, and we need to keep working on that. So thank you. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:58 p.m. Oh, we've got an urban renewal meeting. We do have an urban renewal meeting. Okay. I call to order a meeting of the Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency, October 7th, 2024 at 8:58 p.m. Will the agency recorder please call the roll?
Member Linville?
Present.
Member Ockervall?
Here.
Member Dunwell?
Here.
Chair Fitzgerald?
Here.
And Member Barry is excused.
Member Ockervall, may I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda?
Your Honor, I move to approve the following order of agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the order of agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved 4-0. Before I read this statement, I will ask if we have anyone wanting to testify on Zoom or on phone or in the meeting. So I don't have to read that. We will now have a public hearing.
Mayor, I think you want to do the consent agenda.
Oh, wait, it was just like, I thought I did. It's like,
Well, now you're going to make me question it.
I didn't do the vote. I had the motion and second. I mean, it's just been too long. The motion to approve the consent agenda has been moved and seconded.
No, it hasn't. We haven't even done the item, so how about I read the consent agenda?
That's what I did. Sorry, I'm just speeding through the agenda.
So the consent agenda is minutes of the September 5, 2024 Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Thank you. The consent agenda has been read. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
The motion to approve the consent agenda as read has been moved by Member Ackerval and seconded by Member Linville. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. That brings us to our public hearing. Will the agency attorney please read the title?
URA Resolution Number 352, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency authorizing a supplemental budget adjustment for fiscal year 2024-25.
Tonight, we will have a public hearing to consider URA Resolution Number 352. The order of procedure for tonight's hearing is set out in detail in our city code. In brief, we will start with a staff report. Next, the public will be asked to provide testimony. I will ask everyone who signed up in advance to testify first in the order in which they signed up. Then, I will ask if anyone present in council chambers would like to testify. And then I will ask anyone who is on the Zoom meeting who has not testified but would like to testify to do so. For those in the audience, please fill out a speaker card and provide to the city recorder. For those on Zoom, if you want to provide public testimony remotely during this meeting, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your telephone to notify the city recorder you wish to speak when time for public testimony is called. If you are having difficulty with these instructions, you may call 1-669-900-6833 and when prompted, enter webinar ID number 815-3605-6468. Both numbers are shown on the screen. When you begin your testimony, please state your name and address for the record, or you may state that your address is as provided to staff. After each person testifies, members may pose questions to me to be addressed by the person who testified or to staff to clarify any information that was conveyed in the testimony. Once the agency has heard from everyone and the agency is satisfied it has all the information it needs to render a decision, the public hearing will be closed. Agency deliberates, and I will announce the result. We wish to hear from everyone who wishes to testify. However, we request that you refrain from repeating testimony already given by someone else. If you agree with what someone before you has said, please provide your testimony indicating that you concur with what has been previously said. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. We will time the testimony and provide you with a visual warning when there is 1 minute remaining. The public hearing is now open. We will hear the staff's presentation.
Good evening, Catherine Smith, Assistant Finance Director. Before you this evening is a budget supplemental. This supplemental budget includes the rollover of budget authority from the prior fiscal year for capital improvement projects not yet completed. Primarily, this is just due to a timing difference of when work is performed for Beckman Dip Bridge and Brown Road improvements. And that concludes staff presentation. We welcome any questions.
Thank you. Does any member have clarifying questions for staff?
Just so I understand, this was money that was budgeted in the previous year.
Correct.
For these same projects?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And to clarify, this urban renewal money that we were discussing is being used for partial funding of building the Beckman Dip Bridge.
Correct.
And for the Brown Road improvements, urban renewal funding. Do we have anyone who signed up for testimony from in person, on Zoom, or in the room? Okay. Does staff have anything further to add to the record at this time, or does the agency have any additional questions for staff? Hearing no further questions and everyone having testified, I hereby declare this public hearing closed at 9:05 p.m. on October 7th. It is now time for the agency to consider URA Resolution 352. Do I have a motion on URA Resolution 352, Member Ockervall?
I move to adopt URA Resolution number 352.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Urban Renewal Resolution number 35, or a motion to adopt URA Resolution 352 has been moved by Member Ockervall and seconded by Member Linville. Is there any discussion?
No.
I think we've covered all of this very well, and we have detailed items in the packet. So hearing no further discussion or commentary, I will call for a vote on the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 4-0. The urban renewal meeting is adjourned. 9:06.